Womp, womp,
Hey,
womp.
Welcome to the Sunday Show After Dark. I'm your host, Forrest Valkai, and I am joined today by the gorgeous and kind Darante LaMar.
Oh, that's now I'm blushing. Y'all can't see it, but it's happening. It's happening.
My dude, I haven't seen you in so long. How have you
Right?
been?
It's been like I've been tired. I've been tired, Forrest. Since the last time we spoke, I took a nap.
Yeah.
That's what I did.
Hey,
I know you couldn't, but I did.
That sounds fantastic. I was on some other show.
Yes.
Oh
man.
yeah,
I think it was the first time I've taken a nap in 8 years.
Hell yeah. For those who don't know, I was on Darante's channel this morning talking about science, talking about racism and how he hates white people,
Yes.
and how
just setting me up like that, man.
I didn't expect
we had an incredible conversation.
It was great.
It was amazing, man.
I loved it. I loved every second. It was really fun. It came out of left field. I didn't think I probably said, but like, I didn't think I'd get on this one with a white guy or something like that.
Yes. Oh yeah. I was like,
So funny.
Holy snap. I didn't, you never know how much you're going to have in common with someone. And just when Forrest was sharing his story this morning, I was like, damn, I didn't expect to have this much in common with a white guy. This feels good. This is humanism, folks. That's what this is.
So fucking funny. It killed me. But it was a great time, so go watch that if you want to go watch that, or don't. I'm not a cop, I don't care. And we now on this show it'll be something entirely different, because we've got lines open now for, specifically, we're trying to take as many theist calls as possible tonight. So call that number on the bottom of the screen, 720-619-2288. If you get a busy signal, either call again, or if you keep getting busy signals, wait a little while. I'm looking at what Arden just put in the thing. I agree, and also line number 1. But and also line number 7/4. But yeah, that's just my opinion. I don't know what Darante thinks. Maybe he's more nicer than me. But yeah, we're open the lines with theists. So if you believe in a god or gods, if you believe in the Bible, if you believe in Jesus Christ, if you believe in any of the supernatural claims that we deal with on this show, if you believe that God is good, or that God is just, or that God is kind, if you don't believe in science and you take issue with things like evolution and the Big Bang and the age of the earth, if you think that there is some great culture war raging in this country and that trans people are to blame, if you believe in any of the things that we here on the line, if you have opposite beliefs, any things you're on the line that we stick up for, things like science, things like humanism, things like progress and prosperity and the benefit of all mankind through science and reason and humanist values, if you want to talk about those things better than I have been stumbling through talking about those things the past couple of minutes, number on them on the screen, 720-619-2288, or use the web link in the description. Pick up that phone, give us a call. Darante's very nice, and I'm an idiot, so you'll have no problem at all. If you have something good to say, you'll have no problem at all. And what I think really I want to put out there, because the lines are already pretty full, but I just very quickly also want to put out there that, like, we get on every fucking show, we get people in the comments talking about how these atheists don't understand blah, 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 or how this channel is I recently had comments from somebody saying that the line is a cult. and that
Wow.
he can defend that claim that to shows that this is all a religion that we're running here, or that that you believe men can be women and women can be men, and therefore you don't get something about spiritualism and faith and blah, blah. We get comments about them every time. I get comments about shit from somebody telling me that they can debunk evolution and they can prove the existence of God, or that I don't understand the Bible, or that I don't understand Christianity, or that I don't understand the evolution, that I don't know whatever else. I get comments about it on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube, here, all the time, all over the place. Call in. This is your chance. If what you're saying is really true, and if you can really dog walk me as easily as you think, make a fool out of me. We got 25 to 30,000 people on average on these shows watching these things. Pick up the phone. Let us hear your best. Like I said, we're nice. I try to match energy with callers. I'm generally pretty chill with callers who call in until you take it somewhere stupid. If you're wasting time, if you're being an asshole, then maybe we'll get heated. But like honestly, we're gonna be as nice as possible. So pick up that phone. If you can't get through, we've already had 19 people try to call in and get a busy signal. It says here on the screen. Call back. And if you're still getting a busy signal, wait until the moment we drop a call and call in then. You know what I mean? Just stick around. This show is for you. With that, Darante, LaMar, are you ready to jump right in?
Let's jump right in.
Okay. Let's talk to M, pronouns whichever, from New Zealand, who says, I like to argue that God is not immoral, and it says in parentheses, against your slavery argument. So right away setting the stage. And let's see how it goes. M, you're on the line with Forrest and Darante. How are you doing today?
Hi. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous.
No reason to be nervous. Darante's very nice and I'm very dumb.
Yeah, I've been listening for a while. So yeah, often you'll get people arguing that God's not immoral, and you'll bring up the slavery argument. I also wrote etc. there, so if there's anything else you want to bring up, I'm happy to talk about that too. You argue that the Bible, what's the word you use? Condones?
But yeah, so to be very clear, there's just to make sure we're not getting off track. I would argue that the God of the Bible is immoral for a lot of reasons. There are a lot of things that the God of the Bible does that is just hideous, says, does, condones, and ordains. To be make sure I'm not mincing any words, the Bible front to back is a pro-slavery book. It is pro-genocide. It is pro-misogyny. It is pro-rape. It is not a good book, and the God of the Bible, the God presented in this book, is not a good God.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay. And I would disagree, as you can probably guess.
Sure.
Okay. So Old Testament. Let's start with the Old Testament. Okay. So yeah, there's laws in the Old Testament that you've said describe how to do slavery, I suppose. Legalize slavery, I suppose, in a way.
And those laws are handed down directly by God, and they are very explicit that you can own people as property. It tells you where to buy them, how to beat them, where you get them from, that you can pass them down to your children. It has different rules for Hebrew and non-Hebrew slaves, and along with loopholes and exceptions to make Hebrew slaves as chattel slaves, as the non-Hebrew slaves always are. It does not mince words. It is very clear we are talking about actual chattel slavery.
Yep. And I'm not disputing that that's there. The reason why I would say that doesn't make God immoral is, I guess I'm just going to take an argument that Jesus had with, was it Sadducees in the New Testament? They came up to him and so basically, people came up to Jesus and they said, this bad thing that people often say God doesn't condone. What's the story with that? And Jesus says, well, it's a bad thing. You shouldn't do it. God doesn't condone that. And then they say, we've got you. why then does Moses give us laws around how to do it? Jesus' response, which, sorry, I just got a spider on me. Okay, sorry, got distracted. Jesus' response to that, and I would argue his response to slavery would also be, God gave you those laws because he knew you were going to do it anyway, and so he gave you the laws to have you do it in safer, better ways.
Okay.
Whoa.
So
in the
think-
particular case, he's talking about divorce, saying divorce shouldn't ever happen, but you've got
Sure.
laws around divorce because you knew you were going to do it anyway. So that's why there are laws to make it safer, because God would agree with you and everyone else on the line and all the other left people that abstinence only isn't a good form of legal structure.
Right. So, do you think that people were going to eat shellfish anyway? You think that
That's
people were going to eat shrimp?
That's not a moral. I would argue that's not a moral law.
Okay, but God does. But just to be clear, God very specifically says, do not eat shellfish. He doesn't tell you how to eat shellfish well. He doesn't tell you how to make sure that they're clean or how to make sure they're cooked properly. He just says, don't fucking do it. So why did he do that with slavery?
I'd say that law's in a different category, along with the laws about mixed fabrics.
Which would you say is more important? Which would you say is more important as a law?
More important.
Yeah, like which one holds a higher moral value between eating shellfish and owning people as property?
The laws, a law forbidding slavery would be more moral than a law forbidding shellfish.
So I don't think the argument you were gonna do it anyway holds up when God gives very strict, clear commandments about don't do this and do that. I just said do. Make sure that you absolutely, under no circumstance, he says, don't cut your hair a certain way, don't wear certain clothes, don't trim your beard a certain way, don't plant crops a certain way, don't eat certain things, don't touch certain things, don't say certain things, don't draw images of certain things. Very, very clear on a lot of shit that certainly changed people's lives. The commandment not to work on the Sabbath, they kill a guy in the Bible where he was collecting sticks on the Sabbath. He wasn't even part of the group. He was just some guy that the Israelites saw collecting sticks on the Sabbath, and they just murdered him for breaking their rules that he didn't even know about. They are very, very clear about what rules matter. And then sometimes, specifically when it comes to whether or not human beings can be used as farming equipment, well, fuck, man. What's God to do? They were going to do it anyway. How could he possibly stop them? When they were worshiping a golden calf, he can fucking stop them. But when it comes to beating people and passing them down to their children as property, they're going to do it. So he just has to let them.
The laws about shellfish, about clothing, about hair, those are not moral code.
Can I ask you how you determine which ones are moral and which ones are not?
So, that's a word. That's a question.
Oh yeah.
I suppose arguably the entire thing is the Old Testament and the New Testament, right? Serve different purposes. The Old Testament is
well, not necessarily about the New Testament.
Not really
right
about
now.
morality,
you
I guess,
said,
in a way.
You said that the codes about the fabric and the shellfish are not moral codes. So what I'm asking is, what methodology or what process did you use to come to that conclusion? How do you determine that those are not moral codes? Because from a biblical perspective, if it's a law of God and you're violating it, that makes you immoral.
And yeah, I guess. And if the Israelites violated those laws about shellfish and clothing and all that, they would be doing the wrong thing, and they'd have to make a solution for that in the way the law demands.
Sure. And would they be
Yeah.
punished by God for doing those wrong things? Would you call those things sins?
Yes.
Okay.
At that
And
time.
isn't every sin equal in the eyes of God? Which means it doesn't matter what kind of law it was. If they ate shellfish and that's a sin, or they owned a human being and that's a sin, they're equally bad. And yet he chose to allow, not just allow, to condone and give instructions on how to do one of them and not the other.
Without even requiring a sacrifice to do it, which he loves his sacrifices. That's
You
odd.
have to bring,
Yeah.
you have to sacrifice turtles and shit if you even have your period. But if you have slaves,
Yes.
it's just like whatever.
Yeah. And again, the Old Testament in general is not an individual moral code.
Okay, you know, you're
Except
doing the same
just-
thing you did earlier.
No, yeah,
And
sorry.
I was gonna
So
say-
how do you determine that?
Um,
How do you determine that? How do you decide that it's not a moral code?
pardon me.
And did you say the Old Testament in general is not a moral code?
Yeah, I did say that.
So the Ten Commandments then are not a moral code because they're in the Old Testament. All three versions of them are in the Old Testament.
The Old Testament. So when I say the Old Testament in general, I mean like, you know, top view. The thing in general is not a moral code. There are
But there are moral codes in it.
parts of it. Sure, I would say like the core, the bits that people call the core of it, right? When Jesus is asked what are the two most important, he goes to the Old Testament, and I'd say those are moral codes as part of the general whole. The law. Yeah.
What
I'm
part of the
still recovering
Bible
from a
you
nervous
gave this story of Jesus saying that divorce
Yeah.
was bad, even though
Yes.
the Bible says how
I
to
did.
do it. What
Yeah.
is there any specific part of the Bible that says do not own slaves at all?
Okay. If you want, is there kind of? That
Ooh.
would, if we want to head over to the New Testament.
Is the New Testament a moral code?
More than the Old Testament is, yeah. So the way I'd put it, if you want me to be more specific, there is the Old Testament is God interacting with the nation state of Israel and describing to the nation state of Israel how to do things, and it's an image too about the flaws in us trying to legalistically. It's a legalistic description of how to that shows the flaws in that way, whereas the New Testament is a description of how God's done it for us, as well as then also a moral description on how we should be. And the New Testament, if we want to talk about how the New Testament condones slavery, let's talk about Onesimus, a Christian escaped slave that Paul sends back to his Christian master.
That's a weird one to pick, but yeah.
Well, I've never heard you talk about it, but I'd say that would be a pretty obvious place to go if you want to talk about the New Testament condoning slavery.
Well, I would talk about, if I was talking about the New Testament condoning slavery, I would talk about Jesus saying that God is the same all the time, past, present, and future. God never changes. That I come not to change the law, but to fulfill it. That not a jot or a tittle of the law shall change until all things come to pass. Those kinds of things, which kind of reinforces over and over and over that everything the God of the Old Testament did is continuous with Jesus's will and Jesus's message as well. So when God in the Old
But the
Testament
same
says,
person,
here's how you own slaves, Jesus also meant that.
Yep. And Paul
the
echoes
same
it when he
person does
says,
different
slaves
things
obey
in
your
different.
masters.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the same person does different things in different scenarios. Like I said, the Old Testament is the legalistic framework, which is written to set the Israelites apart from the people around them, as well as to.
Okay, M, can I ask you? So
Whereas
when Paul says slaves obey your masters, is
Yeah.
he supporting slavery or is he condemning slavery?
He is supporting slavery. This is why I said kind of. We're getting to that.
So that's
Okay.
the moral framework of the New Testament, then, right?
Yeah.
Or that's a part of the moral. All right. So do you not
Yes.
realize your argument just completely fell apart? You
No.
just admitted that this is Paul's moral framework, that this is a part of Christianity's moral framework, that slaves should obey their masters.
Yes.
When your argument was it's not that Jesus said that these are just things people were going to do, which was fallacious in the first place, because you can't conflate divorce and slavery. You can't make Jesus say something that he didn't say. From a theological perspective, that's called eisegesis. You're putting something in the text that is not in the text. But your central argument was that the Old Testament is not a moral framework. And when we asked, hey, how do you determine what is a moral framework and what is not? You could not answer that. And yet you're still trying to assert the claim of what is moral and what isn't moral, but only in your favor. And even when you're presented with evidence like, hey, that's not exactly right, you're just trying to find a way to circle it back and make it right. But we just walked you right into this corner where you had to admit that, yes, the New Testament is supporting slavery. So what exactly is your argument then, M?
Okay, so you didn't walk me into that corner. I was getting there myself. I am aware that Paul says slaves obey your masters. Paul also says masters don't threaten your slaves. Masters treat your slaves the same way I told them just now to treat you. Also says a bunch of other things. So hypothetically,
So,
if
sorry,
you
I know,
were
I'm
my
sorry to interrupt
slave
you.
and you
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but like, he could have just said, don't have slaves. Instead, he
Yes.
said, treat your slaves good, and slaves obey your masters, even if they are cruel to you.
Yes.
So he didn't give any laws or commandments or rules. He gave a kind suggestion to maybe beat the people who you are owning and robbing of freedom a little less, but it's okay if you don't. They should obey you anyway. That's the whole message.
What part of beating someone is not threatening them and treating them the same way they've treated you? Like, yes.
No,
So
to be clear,
if hypothetically you were my slave and you knew I was obeying
the God of the
Paul's
Old Testament gives instructions on how to beat your slaves.
And again, that's not the moral framework, that's the legal framework. We're sticking with the New Testament for a moment.
But right, I get that. But like, who are we supposed to be listening to here? Are we supposed, when we read the Bible, are we supposed to be listening more to God or to Paul?
We're supposed to be listening to God, but the Old Testament is
so
applied
you have
through
you have God who says it's okay to own slaves, beat them, and pass them down as property, and Jesus who says, hey, everything I said in the Old Testament is right. Slavery, green flag for me. And you have Paul who says, maybe just beat your slaves less. And that's
Jesus,
the moral.
Explicitly said in the divorce question, and therefore presumably in others, that
you cannot make that presumption. I will not allow that presumption.
Okay, and right.
And furthermore,
when you're saying Jesus said everything I said in the Old Testament.
Even if I take what you're saying at face value, that's, first of all, it goes against other things that Jesus said. And second of all, it's still just the laziest argument possible for God to say he was so weak that he could tell everybody how to structure their entire society and religion, but he couldn't make them stop owning slaves. He couldn't tell them to do that. They were going to do that anyway. He had no power to stop them. He burned 2 kids alive for putting the wrong incense in an incense burner. And then commanded his parents not to grieve their children, otherwise he would kill them and the rest of their city too. That happened. He killed 2 children and then threatened to destroy the rest of the population if their parents grieved them. And he can't say don't own slaves?
And let's not forget that Jesus physically assaults people in property that is not his. And he sits down, takes the time to actually fashion a whip to do that, to carry out this assault. And then if you actually pay attention to the theology of Jesus, you pay attention to his theology, he's actually teaching people how to be slaves.
Yep. He fashioned a whip and overturned tables and beat the shit out of a bunch of people because he was so fucking passionate about money lending. He was so passionate about
corrupting Christianity.
He was serious about blasphemy and he was serious about microeconomics, but he didn't give a fuck to say anything about slavery. Man. I'm sorry, if this guy exists, his priorities are way out of whack.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right. I don't recall any particular time Jesus spoke directly about slavery. Though I do find the story of Jesus, flipping over the capitalist stalls and chasing them out of the temple kind of fun.
Yeah. So let me just ask you this: is there, like, if somebody, just pick anybody you like, just a random amorphous theoretical person, if somebody endorses and condones slavery and approves of slavery and says this is something you're allowed to do and he tells people how to do, no matter what, is there any circumstance in which that person is in the right?
And I'm trying to okay.
Come on. Be honest.
Yes. I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to say it's complicated, but I'm going to say yes.
Okay. Please give me the exact scenario in which slavery is good and morally justifiable.
Okay. Now, honestly, I'm not from America, so I'm not fully up on exactly how.
I think you cut out. It may be that your phone went to sleep because you're on the web caller. So make sure your phone's awake. We can't hear a word you're saying.
None.
Em, are you there?
Are you with us, Em?
Em going once. Em going twice.
Don't go into the light.
I wanna hear you explain to me why and when exactly slavery is good. And then I want to tell you what a piece of shit you are for saying whatever the fuck you're about to say. And it sounded like he said he's not from America, so he isn't quite up to date on something. You don't have to be from America to get slavery. I promise you that.
That's where my mind went. Oh my goodness.
I promise the New Zealandese, they can understand slavery just fine. They're human beings and they know what freedom is. M dropped. Here we go. Hold on, wait. He's back in the queue. Let me try.
All right.
M, can you hear us? Okay.
I can hear you.
Your question
Welcome
is,
back.
please explain the exact circumstance in which slavery is good.
So I might be have a complete misconception of how it worked. But so what would happen to a free black person in the American South way back when?
Okay.
What would happen to them, if you wouldn't mind?
It depends a lot on where they were and how much money they had. But like we afterwards had, after slavery, we still had segregation. We still had Jim Crow laws. We still had a lot of things that kept black people in this country down. Are you going to say that it was better for them to be enslaved because if they were free, they would be treated badly? Because I'm going to actually pull my eyeballs out through my ears if I have to hear you say that shit.
I'm not going to say that it's.
Yeah,
What
I
I
feel
would
like you're
say
about to
is that-
fuck up, and I'm hoping that you don't. Don't do it. Don't do it, man.
Okay, so how about? Okay, I am kind of going to say that because from what I understand, this was honestly something I learned apparently just yesterday on a historian's show. Black people
shit.
would buy their own family members. Black people would buy their own family members in order to keep them safe. So the black people was a slave. The black person there was a slave owner.
you
What is
imagine-
the point that you're trying to make?
Is that ethical slave owning? If you
Can
buy
you
your own
Say that
family
again?
members to keep them safe.
What?
Can you just imagine for a second? Just try for 1 second to put yourself in this situation where you live in a society where it is so normalized for you and your family and anybody who looks like you to be bought and sold as property, to be beaten, to be eaten. They ate them. To be raped, to be tortured. You are so completely dehumanized that the only thing that you need to do, the only option available to you is to put your family members into that situation to try to make them have not a good outcome, but a slightly better one. Not the worst outcome, just a better one. And you're going to look at that and say this is an ethical use of this system, and not just say this system as a whole is so fucked up and broken that it makes the people who are subject to this level of dehumanization continue to propagate it just to survive. And you're going to call that
I agree
ethical?
the system is broken. No, I agree the system
Then
is
why
broken.
didn't God
I would say that
stop
what
it?
the person did was ethical.
Then why didn't God stop it? Because God didn't
only
say,
performs miracles.
hold on. I swear to fucking God, dude. God didn't say, listen, y'all, slavery's so evil that sometimes you have to use it in this way to get around it. And this is no, God said, you can own slaves. You can buy them from these people. You can beat them in these ways. You can pass them on to children. Here's how to trick a Jewish person into being a slave too. God told you how to do it. He told you when to do it. He told you what to pay for it. He told you how to pass them down. He gave you loopholes to fucking trick other people into it. You are trying to use a horrifically fucked up situation to justify a horrifically fucked up system and saying that God is now absolved from the sin of commanding that system into existence. I am not nearly full of enough shit to believe what you are saying, Em, and I don't think you are either. I think you are in a fucking pretzel trying to make this make sense.
You asked me for one situation where slavery was ethical.
It's not ethical.
Ethical.
So are you saying it was not ethical for those particular black people to buy their own family?
It's not ethical for them to be forced into that situation. It wasn't ethical for them to be a part of a system, which that's what we're talking about, slavery. And what you're saying is, if a former slave is a part of a slave-holding system and navigates that fucking system, which is immoral in the fucking first place, that, this proves that slavery is okay. That's like saying if someone is in prison and they get their ass beat, at least they didn't die because the guards were there. So don't you see how the prison system is helpful? This makes no sense, man, because what you're saying is that these people who are forced into a slave system, okay, that's what you're overlooking. Do you think if those people weren't a part of the American legal system that they would be forced to buy the freedom of their family members? Do you not realize that just even having the option to purchase another person is the problem? Period.
I'm aware that's the problem. I'm aware that's the problem, period.
You
Yes.
don't sound
And what
like
I'm saying is
you're
that there
literally
are
calling in
ethical
to say
ways.
that it's not a problem.
I'm
And
not
you're
saying
You're
it's not a
literally
problem. I'm
calling
saying
to
there
say
are
that it's
ethical ways.
moral.
And even if I believed you, even if I agreed with you that this is what I could now call ethical and that this is somehow a shining light of how slavery can be good sometimes, that is absolutely not. That is absolutely not what the Bible is talking about. That is absolutely not what God is talking about.
I would say in the New Testament it is.
In the New Testament, where he says, slaves, obey your masters.
Obey your masters.
And masters, even when they are cruel. And masters, don't let your slaves free, but maybe try beating them less. You think that that is moral slavery?
I do think that yes.
Fuck you.
Yep. That's where that goes. Not only have you failed to support your own claim of the morality of God, what you have successfully done is demonstrated your sincere lack of morality. And that's wild.
Yep.
And I also want to call out something you said earlier. You said you watched a show on the history thing yesterday, and you said that's when you learned something. No, sir, you didn't learn anything yet. That's not how learning works. You just heard somebody say something. And that's what concerns me, is that people like you are hearing things and thinking that is learning. And that's why you made these claims that you couldn't back up. Going back, you keep saying this is moral, this is legal, but you can't define the difference between the two. You cannot determine the distinguishment. You cannot distinguish the two, which means you're just saying shit and you don't even know that's what you're doing because you're a parrot at this moment. You're just parroting things that you've heard. What I'd really love for you to do, M, is learn how to learn. And then once you've done that, maybe you'll realize how much bullshit you just said tonight. And I will echo Forrest, fuck you.
Seriously. There is no good slavery, M. I hope you learn that someday. Fuck off, and we're going to move on to the next call. Good gravy. I hope that dude's ashamed of himself because he fucking deserves it.
Oh, yeah. That's yikes. I need a cigarette or something. Damn.
I don't smoke, and I do too. Fun enough. Let's talk to somebody completely different, hopefully. Let's talk to Michael, pronouns he, him, who wants to present his case for God. Michael, you're on the line with Forrest and Darante. Please don't defend slavery. let's
right, please.
Yeah.
I'm sweating, man. Don't do it.
Yeah. No, not here for that.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's
off to a great start.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess this is kind of like a case for deism, really. It just kind of starts with simple awareness at the bottom level, just kind of perfectly concealed at like a zero stage of lucidity. And so my theory basically is that as we get emerging complexity, we just get systems of emerging complexity, which then give rise to processes, which drive their own emerging complexities within those processes, which lead to this kind of internal feedback, which will eventually lead to a point of contact, leading to a kind of point of exposure, leading to the earliest stages of lucidity. I think maybe that gave rise to the earliest stages of life, which I believe is its own process of emergent complexities. It just continues to evolve through the process of evolution. So eventually we get like a complex system of processes of senses, which kind of open up space within those processes out of internal feedback, contact, and exposure, giving rise to a new degree of lucidity, kind of creating this occupation with its own vantage point. And so now we have animals who can be aware of what's sensed through the senses, right? The sense that they sense through the senses. This is what leads to perception, the early stages of perception. And as, we get more complexity, we get more internal feedback, more points of contact, more exposure, gives rise to a higher degree of lucidity, opens up a new occupation within the processes of the brain, which comes pre-assigned with its own new vantage point, which gives us access to a new plane of new landscape of truth where we can expose ourselves to new higher truths, right? Like animals. Once lucidity arises within perception, right? That's when we gain access to spatiality, temporal reality. Yeah, I guess I'm kind of fun. I'm a bit nervous if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah.
I don't understand what you just said. I feel like Jordan
thank you,
Peterson
Forrest.
just
I
tried
thought
to
it was
teach
just
me
me.
evolution.
I had the same
Yeah, no,
thought.
Huh?
Literally.
Yeah.
Same thought.
Michael, I appreciate that you're nervous, and I don't want to, like, I want to hear you out, but like that was such word salad for me. Can you break it down so my dumb brain can understand, like, what's the central concept here that you're trying to get across?
Right. I don't think awareness emerges from complexity so much as systems on complexity kind of create space within those processes that it can arrive into. Kind of like maybe
hold on,
just
stop. Let's just go to the first thing you said. You don't think that awareness arises from complexity. That's the first thing you said. What the fuck does that mean?
Well, I don't think the structures in the brain create complexity so much as it gives a kind of
they
opening.
Don't. The structures in the brain are complex. They don't create complexity. They do create awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So are we on the same page that, like, our brain is a physical thing? It is very complex. It is where our consciousness comes from. Do we agree on that?
Kind of. I believe that consciousness actually pre-exists the brain, but the brain allows for a place where it can expose itself to itself. Like that awareness is already there.
Okay.
Awareness
So we're taking an idealism versus materialism stance, and you're saying that consciousness exists separate as its own thing, and the brain is somewhat of a conduit or an antenna through which that consciousness is filtered and refined into the experience that we have of the world around us. Is that a fair representation of what you're saying?
pretty close.
Okay. Can you give me one example of a consciousness existing outside of matter?
Not in a manner where it would be aware. If anything, it would just be completely unconscious.
What? Okay, so a conscious that is you holy fuck, a consciousness that is unconscious. You're saying that an unconscious consciousness can exist independent of matter.
I believe that unconsciousness just exists, and what processes do allow for lucidity within that just kind of allows for exposure of what's already there. Like it's just kind of a substrate that's just there, but it has means or method.
Are you using the term unconsciousness to mean a material that could be conscious but is not? Or are you saying it is just the state of not being conscious, period, in which case literally everything that is not conscious, even this eraser right here, is unconscious instead of not conscious? It is unconscious. Is that the way you're using that word? Or are you saying that the eraser must first have the ability to be conscious and at this moment is failing to do that and therefore is unconscious? Which way are you using that word?
I'm using it more like I don't know if I fully understand your question.
You said, I asked you, can you give me one example of consciousness existing independent of matter? And you said, yes, but it would be in an unconscious state. So I asked a follow-up question. Can you give me an example of unconscious consciousness outside of matter? And you said some words that involved the word unconsciousness being some sort of a substrate, as if it was like this plane, this field from which consciousness can then be built on top of. And I'm trying to understand what you mean by that. This marker, as far as I know, does not have a consciousness. It has no brain. It has no think. There's no thought process. There's no intentionality, no agency, no personhood, nothing available to this marker. Therefore, I would say this marker is not conscious. And that is different than saying that it is unconscious, because unconscious means that it was conscious or could be conscious, but is currently failing to do that. If I get hit in the head really hard, I would be unconscious. I am conscious. I could be conscious. I have the equipment to be conscious, but I'm currently failing to be conscious. Is that how you are also using the word unconscious, or are you saying that everything that is not currently exhibiting consciousness, whether it could or not exhibit conscious, is currently unconscious because the term unconsciousness dictates a substrate of reality upon which consciousness could be built? How are you using that word?
Neither.
Fuck.
Yeah, it's not about all those items. Yeah, sorry, you were completely backwards on all that, my guy.
Okay, so tell me what you actually mean, because clearly I'm not understanding what the hell you're talking about when you say that something conscious can exist. No, pardon, not something conscious. You said that consciousness can exist in an unconscious state, external of all matter. So start back there, because that's apparently where I got lost. What do you mean by that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, so I guess the best way I can describe it is, imagine a room where it's just, there's only light, but there's nothing to reflect off that light. It would just look dark. And so you need to set up mirrors and reflectors to actually capture the light in a way where the light can be exposed. So it's not about you're putting it all these items like, does this eraser pass the consciousness check?
Hold the fuck on. Stop. I have a room made of dark matter. The room is made of matter. The room is a thing that exists.
Hold on a second, my guy. You guys don't have to be rude.
No, I'm not being rude. I'm trying to understand what the fuck you're saying. I'm asking you deliberate questions, and you're just going off on these tangents saying a bunch of shit that I'm not following because I don't understand the way you're using these words is a totally different way than I've used them for my entire life. So I'm just trying to understand.
I'm sorry you're getting so frustrated that you can't keep up, but don't take your agitation out on me because you can't.
Michael,
that's not my problem.
It's not about anybody keeping up. It's you being poor at explaining what you're saying. I'm not frustrated. I'm trying to understand, and you're going off on a tangent. So I'm being very passionate about what I'm saying.
I can sense the energy.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Okay, with what organ do you sense energy? I'm speaking to you the way that I would be speaking to a professor that was giving me a new concept that didn't make any sense. I'm very serious about learning, and I'm very serious about understanding what someone's talking about so I don't miss your argument. I am doing you the courtesy of repeating back what I'm hearing and allowing you to correct what I'm saying so that we can have this conversation in the most effective way possible. I am being very polite to you. So I need you to tone down the bullshit like 12 degrees and just say what the fuck you're trying to say. You told me that if I have a room which light doesn't bounce off of, so that would be dark matter. Dark matter doesn't interact with light, but it does have a physical presence. So I've got a room that has physical presence.
I didn't say anything about dark matter. You lost it again, my guy. Yeah,
I'm just repeating what you said, Michael. You said if I have a room where light exists in the room, but light doesn't bounce off of anything. The only way that would be possible, as far as I know, is for that room to be made of dark matter. Don't get hung up on the words. Just try to keep up with what I'm saying, because I'm trying to repeat what you're saying back to you in a framework that makes sense.
What's the connection between a room full of only light and dark matter? Where does that come from?
He said it twice. He literally said it twice.
It's what you said.
What,
you said if I have a room. You said that if I have a room.
In a room with only light, there'd be dark matter. Why?
No, I didn't. You said that if there was a room which had light in it, but that light doesn't bounce off of anything, then I would then need to install reflective surfaces in order to make it bounce around. The only physical material that I know of that light doesn't bounce off of or interact with in any way is dark matter. So I'm not saying that to make your case. I'm saying that in a language that I understand. So in a room where light
take a photo of what you just said.
What?
Right. Take an image of what you just said. A room full of dark matter. You said the only way you can have light that doesn't reflect is a room full of dark matter.
I didn't say it was full of it. I said it was made of it.
Where is dark matter coming from? That's what I'm trying to figure out, is the arrival of dark matter. Where did where
listen, Michael, he's explained this to you like 3 or 4 times now. What he's saying is the scenario, the hypothetical you pitched, in order for that scenario to be accurate, your view is that light doesn't reflect off of other things. And he's telling you, no, light reflects off of everything. So the only way for your scenario to be accurate is that the room would have to be made of dark matter. Now, this is the 5th time we've explained it. Do you get it now?
And what's bothering me is it genuinely doesn't actually matter. I'm just trying to get to the end. This was the very first setup of the scenario where you were explaining to me how unconscious consciousness can exist independent of matter. And the first thing you said was, imagine a room with light that doesn't bounce off anything. So I'm just trying to picture what the fuck you're saying so you can get on to making your point. So just follow along with your own train of thought for a second and just take me here. We've got a room where light doesn't bounce off of stuff. For whatever fucking reason, it doesn't. And so I now need to bring in some sort of reflective surface to allow light to bounce off of that so that I can perceive the light in the room bouncing off of the thing, and I can now perceive the room. Where does that take me next to consciousness? What's the next step in this thought experiment?
You just arrived, my guy. You're aware. Hallelujah.
I'm aware of what? That light exists?
This dude.
Yes, that's the point. Now you have light. Now you're aware, but you needed the reflectors first. That's what the processes are for. They're the reflectors, so you can see the light.
This dude.
Where did we get to prophecies? We were talking about consciousness.
Huh?
Where did we get to prophecies?
The prophecies are the reflectors that allow for the consciousness to be. Huh?
I asked you about idealism versus materialism. And I asked you about consciousness, and you said that consciousness can exist outside of matter. Where did prophecies come into this?
The processes is what allows for consciousness to be aware. Well, it's actually awareness. It doesn't become conscious until it's exposed to itself. You're flipping consciousness to awareness. You got them backwards.
You presented these concepts in a totally new way that no one has ever said to me before. So,
well,
if you're
I offered you something novel, my guy.
You didn't offer me something novel. You offered me something nonsensical. I'm trying like hell to just make what you said make even a fraction of a little bit of sense. I'm just trying to articulate your own ideas back to you. And you have no recourse to be a condescending prick about it.
So you know how we arrived at the conclusion where we can capture and reveal light with reflectors?
We can capture and reveal light without reflectors. Get to that
point, but I'm not the one making it complicated.
We can capture and reveal light without reflectors.
But you still have something that can capture and reflect it. The point is that the light's already there.
What? At this point, Michael, it's been...
Michael, you said this was a theory. This was your theory, right? Was that correct, Michael? You said that this is your theory that you're presenting?
Well, it's not like a theory I'm getting ready to publish in an article. It's an idea that I'm working on.
No. Okay, so that's what I wanted to clarify. So this is just an idea, not a theory.
Yeah.
Okay, so that means you've not tested any of these concepts.
Well, it's a point of view.
Well, no. What I'm asking is, have you tested any of these concepts?
Of course not. No.
Have you qualified yourself to have an opinion on this subject?
Qualified to have an opinion? Wow.
On this subject, yes. The fact that hurts you, the fact that hurts you,
opinion.
Testing your hypothesis would be a good one. Testing your hypothesis will be a good place to start. If you have an idea and you believe that idea is accurate, you try to test that idea. That's how you qualify yourself to have an idea. Or that's how you qualify yourself to have an opinion. You're making claims that you claim you believe, but you don't believe them enough to even try to test them. You just think them, and then you say, this is true because I think it. Then why haven't you tested them, my guy? That means
I'm
you
not sure
either
how
you either
close.
believe your ideas and you're just incapable of testing them, which again, if you are currently incapable of testing your idea, qualify yourself to do so.
I mean, I think it's a pretty self-evidential case. I mean, awareness exists.
Yeah, that's
You
Right,
tried,
that's not how
but it
thinking
failed
works.
miserably.
Yeah, that you weren't able to
Well, no, I mean,
articulate
awareness
the
is
tenets
self-evidential.
of your point.
Awareness is just inherently self-evidential already. It's just how do we arrive at that assertion?
So no, what
case is already
Darante was
made.
just saying, I'm sorry that you weren't able to keep up what Darante was saying, but what he was expressing to you is that you have not just presented an idea that awareness exists. If that was your idea, we would agree with you and move on. You have presented an entire framework of consciousness and reality and idealism and the basic structure of the universe we live in, and you have no fucking idea about anything you're talking about, nor do you have the capacity to articulate it properly, so much so that we spent 15 minutes, or no, 17 minutes now, of me as a scientist and Darante as a scientist trying to understand even just the basics of what you're talking about, and you have failed to be able to put them into a language that anybody else can understand. So, like, it's very clear that you have not done the hard work of even thinking about what you're talking about.
Oh no, I put a lot of thought into it. You're just getting offended and rambling on. You don't even know half the reason why you're pissed. You just came preloaded.
I'm not pissed. I'm not pissed. I'm bored.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It sounds to me, Michael, like you've got one defense mechanism here, which is to try like hell to elicit an emotional response and get somebody on the back foot by telling them they're pissed and they're upset and it's all your fault for you.
Oh,
You can't keep up with this. And then the more that
we call that trolling.
Then get upset. The more that we get upset, then it means that we can't actually talk about what you're trying to talk about because you put on this
I've been trying to de-escalate, my guy.
And even just now, you're interrupting.
I've been trying to de-escalate.
Even just now, you're interrupting me for no reason. It's this thin veneer that we see all the time with people who have big opinions that they have not qualified themselves to even fucking think about, who want to spread their big ideas about shit they don't know anything about. And then whenever anybody who actually takes this shit seriously just tries to make it make sense and is maybe passionate and excited about learning, you have no confidence and no way to dismantle that or go against that, rather than to try to put that person on the back foot and say that, yo, you're just emotional, you're just upset, you're so angry, you don't even know why you're pissed. I'm not pissed. I'm bored. I like learning, and you failed to teach me anything.
Oh, man.
Well, I'm sorry that you're so bored. You're obviously not pissed. I mean, realistically, I was trying to de-escalate the situation. Maybe I didn't do a very good job. I thought
you haven't did a good job of doing anything that you've tried to do today. You have failed at everything you've tried today.
First of all, the situation wasn't escalated in the first place. Second of all, you want to de-escalate a situation by being a condescending asshole and telling people, listen, I'm sorry, you just can't keep up with my burgeoning intellect here. Literally, I was giving you an example of it when you interrupted me.
When did I call you an asshole? When did I use the F word? When did I raise my voice and get all excited?
You literally interrupted me giving you an example of it. See, this is the thing, man. If you're gonna troll,
I interrupted.
If you're gonna troll, you need to be better at it. This is the thing with Poe's law. This is the thing with Poe's law. Is it's hard to tell if somebody is trolling or if they're just genuinely fucking just like not making any sense and they actually believe the ridiculous things they're saying. This is a great example of that. I would say that if you are just trolling, you need to do a better job, because so far what you've done is you've made yourself look like just somebody who took too big of a bong hit and called the call-in show to say some things. And then you misinterpreted my passion for anger. And then when I called you out on that, you couldn't even let me finish a sentence long enough to tell you how you were being a condescending prick. And now you're in this position where you just look foolish. If you wanted to actually get us excited and get us mad, there were good ways to do that. But you failed. So either you believe dumb things and you called in and said dumb things, or you're just a really, really ineffective troll.
Yeah.
No, I might be miscommunicating because you're misrepresenting me. Maybe it's my fault, but no, I don't remember raising my voice.
See, here's the thing. I don't believe you, Michael, because in
At
20
all.
minutes, for the past 20 minutes, I have repeated back to you what you've said and then built upon it and offered you ways to make it more clear. And you've just repeatedly said, no, it's not like that. You're too stupid to understand what I'm saying. You can't keep up with me. I'm sorry you don't understand. You just don't have the IQ to get what I'm trying to talk about. If it was really a
Well, maybe I
miscommunication,
felt like you were being
all of those
condescending
were
to
your
me.
opportunities. All of those were your opportunities to correct that miscommunication, but you couldn't do it because you either don't believe the dumb shit you're saying or you are a very poor communicator.
No, I believe what I'm saying.
You believe what?
I believe what I'm saying.
Then you're a poor communicator. So
Yeah.
practice that, learn how to speak, and learn how to articulate your language, and do what Darante said, qualify yourself in this area. Go actually do some base research, learn what real scientists are saying about this stuff, and what philosophers even are saying about this stuff, before you just come in here with a nose full of your own farts, telling us what you think about what might be behind the universe in a way that you can't even fucking comprehend yourself well enough to say it. That sucks, and it's a waste of everybody's time. With that, Michael, I simply cannot be bothered to continue. Because that's what thinking is all about. That's what people do when they give a shit about whether or not what they believe is true, and what they want to get on a platform in terms of tens of thousands of people and try to make an argument for something they think exists. It is the base, bare minimum of respect, dignity, intellectual honesty, and just common fucking sense to actually try to think about the dumb shit you're saying before you say it. I encourage you to try it sometime, Michael. With that, we're going to move on to somebody who actually gives a fuck and is serious. Goodbye.
Holla.
What a boring waste of time.
That hurt my heart, man. I think I'm having palpitations.
It sucked. It sucked. It sucked so bad.
It did. It did.
We've got a bunch more callers on the line, including we have 2 more theists and 2 agnostics, it looks like.
Ooh.
Do you have the call screen up on your side, my friend?
I do not. Don't have that.
Okay,
yet.
I was going to ask you which one you might like. Let's talk to Kizu, calling in from Mexico, pronouns he, him, who is a theist. And it says, this is what it says on the call screen. And this person called in using the web caller. So this is what they themselves typed in, as far as I know. I'm pretty sure with the web caller, you type in your own thing. It says, about lukewarm theism, loosey-goosey religiosity, Lord of the Gaps, scripture nitpickers, and a lighter, probably better, approach to militant atheism. That's a lot.
Wow. Okay.
Let's figure it out. Kizu, you are on the line with Forrest and Darante. How are you doing?
Hello.
Hi, doing good. Hope you guys are fine too.
Having a great day.
Yeah.
Great. Great. Sorry for the long topic.
Oh, it's fine. I just wanted to
I
make sure I got it all out, because that's a tall order. There's a lot of things you're talking about there.
Yeah, I think it's all
Loosey-goosey.
conversion the same thing. Yeah, I think it's all conversion the same thing. I just want to be like explicit about it. By the way, I didn't know there was like an agnostic option between theist and atheist. I'm more on the agnostic side. I lean into Buddhism, which by itself is sort of agnostic, as I understand it. But before that, I wanted to give you like my perspective or my stance on the whole thing, which is that I'm very loose on my religiosity. I lean into Buddhism because it makes sense to me. When I'm feeling like, I don't know, I feel some sort of purpose, or I'm like down or something, I listen to some mantras, whatever. But I also understand science. I follow Forrest. I love what you do. I love how passionate you are about things, and many other scientists, public, and I see science shows, whatever. So I wanted to talk about people like that. Also, another part of my background is I'm from Mexico. People here are super religious, as you know, but many people I know are like Catholic, exactly. But many people are not like, super serious about it. We study, we go to school, we learn science, and we have a Christ thing on our house, and we have the Last Supper on and we have the abuela who, takes us to school, Catholic school and mass or whatever. So I wanted to see your guys' perspective. Like, you get a lot of nutty people here. You respond to a lot of, the penis prager and all those types of people. I hate those.
Mhm.
But I wanted to see like your perspective on sort of, more regular people. I feel it's the majority of people. I don't know. But I want to see like your perspective on the type of people who say, you know what? I don't know. Science makes sense. I learned about it. There's, the universe. I don't understand it. I know evolution is real, etc., etc., etc. But I want to believe in God. God makes me feel, like I can trust something or, etc. You know what I mean? Like, I want to see your guys' perspective. And the last part of my topic is try to see if the people who do this kind of thing, like make a program about atheism and speak about, try to reason the Bible or God or whatever, can try to target these people who are more on the middle, so to speak, to convince more people to like think and analyze and question things and prove that the vast majority actually thinks, actually is not this nutty type of people who come here like on these shows and start spouting nonsense and all that. So I leave it up to you guys.
Yeah. Darante, you want to start?
Yeah, help me understand. Let's hone in on one question. Let's pick one to start with. What's the actual question here for me, Kisu?
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, well, actually, I follow the show, on YouTube or whatever. What would you say your purpose is doing, these kinds of shows or YouTube videos, stuff like that, like speaking to people about, questioning God and these kinds of questions.
Yeah.
How can we know God is real? What would you say is your purpose?
Of course, as an educator and a communicator, is to give people the tools to critically think about the things that are most important in their lives. For many people, their faith is something that they hold paramount. This is the thing that they say is the most important thing to me in the world. When I deconstructed, I realized that 90%, roughly, of the people who make that statement and who hold to that belief did not believe it enough to ever actually study it. And it kind of goes back to something that you mentioned earlier. Like, even many people in Mexico are Christians, but don't actually take it seriously. We take the rituals seriously. We do certain things, but we're still going to live our lives the way that we live our lives. It's just a crutch that we learn how to lean on. I found that to be highly problematic, because if people are taking something that is the thing that they say is the most important thing to them in the world, and they're not actually taking it so serious where they're understanding it, where they're studying it, where they're critically engaging it, then it is likely that that is not the only place that they're doing that in their lives. If I'm not doing that in the place that is the most important to me, then I'm probably not doing that with my finances. I'm probably not doing that with my career. I'm probably not doing that with my parenting. And that's how we get the larger issue that we have today. If we're not taking the things that we say we sincerely believe so sincerely that we're willing to study them, to verify them, then we are actually taking a slippery slope towards destruction. And that's not even just a guess. We can look at our societies. We can look at how people who have this great belief but are easily scammed, because the same way they approach this belief system is the same way they approach other areas of their lives. So one of the reasons that I do this is to help people get the tools they need. So if they so choose to take these things more seriously, they'll kind of know what that process could look like for them. And they can, one of the biggest things, learn how to learn. And that's what you hear with a lot of the people who call in. They actually don't know what learning is. Most of them are just quoting what they've heard. And so that's one of the reasons that I do this.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, and I mean, the nature of doing this sort of thing invites like more conflicted people, I guess. Like you said, people who don't actually like to learn, trying to question what they know, and that invites. So yeah, because I was thinking of how many nutty people call in and or like Forrest response to the John and Jane videos is like crazy, and sometimes like I feel it has this minority who is super loud, super loud, and makes it feel like there's so many people who aren't critical thinkers. Like I know there's an education problem. Well, here in Mexico we have an education problem. I don't want to presume, but I think in the States it's kind of be worse. I don't know. I don't want to presume, but it's horrible. And I know there's a lot of people who don't like to think. And I just want to have like this perspective on what you do, how it can affect people. Like you said, like they say, "Oh, I believe in this. This is like the like you said, that the thing I hold most precious in my life." But maybe they do question it. Like for example, there's some people who read the Bible and they came to the nutty stuff, like, "Oh, talking donkey," and they say, "Well, whatever. That's a metaphor." Sure. But there's this other part who speaks about love and speaks about treating people kind. I'm gonna take that, And I want to see like if there's some of that in your guys' content that can appeal to those sorts of people, like to, I don't know, make it clear that the minority is super minority, is not the most. Yeah, it's not most people.
Actually, I wouldn't say that's the minority. I'd say that it's actually the majority, because like even something you just said, like there's these parts in the Bible that are about treating people kindly. That's not actually true. That's something that we think is true. If we're talking about treating all people kindly, there's nothing in the Bible that suggests doing that. What people often quote is when Jesus says, "Love your neighbor." But when Jesus says that, he's literally pulling that from Deuteronomy. And that has context. And he does not change that context. The context is exactly what it sounds like. It's love your kinsman. It's love your ethnicity. It is not love everybody. So no, like so I do share content on that. My goal is not to present people the version of the Bible that is absolutely inaccurate. I'm going to present the most accurate version of the Bible possible. I don't see Jesus as a good person. I don't see anything good about Christianity. Jesus, as presented in the Bible, is a warlord. He seeks to return, according to the early Christians, to dominate the entire earth. That is not something that a modern society could ever support. I find it absolutely horrific that people still look at this Jesus guy and calls him a good guy when we see all of the things that he did in Scripture. The only way you could do that, going back to what I said from the beginning, is if you're not critically engaging your faith. You believed something about Jesus before you ever read the Bible, and then when you read the Bible and saw things that did not line up with it, you did kind of like what you say other people do. Well, that's just a metaphor. So when Jesus calls a woman a dog, well, he has a good reason for calling a woman a dog. When Jesus tells people to let the dead bury their dead and tells a man that if you can't attend your father's funeral if you want to follow me, when Jesus tells people to abandon your wife and your children and don't worry about it because you'll get all of it back 100-fold, this is not a good person. This is a con artist. And more people need to know that. The fact that people don't know that means we're all pretending to know things that we don't know. And that should terrify us, because that's how you create a society where people begin to get marginalized based off of other people's ignorance. And we have to do the work to undo that.
Okay. So your position will be like, there's no good way. That's where the Bible nitpicking I was referring to. Like many people, I don't know, see those Bible verses and let's treat them as fairy tales because they are. Based in some things that actually happened. Some, I guess, but they're fairy tales. And so I can interpret like, I don't know, Pinocchio in some sort of way, and might make sense to me. It goes to also some other conversations that you guys have with morality, going to the point that some people think that religion brings morality, which it's backwards. We put our morality into religion. So sometimes when we interpret texts that are super old from, civilizations that were awful, some of them, and we have to bring that scripture to our own morality, which makes no sense. So what I would say is your position, my question is, your position is that even those people who interpret those texts say, okay, I'm going to read that in today's times, in today's morality, could be also wrong in the sense that you cannot see this as moral in any way, even if you take it as a fairy tale that you want to like twist and turn into it making it sense. That would be your position.
Yep, I would say that is problematic because we already have fairy tales, we already have fables, we already have mythology, and you mentioned some of them, and we already have a relationship with them without having to make them authoritative, or without having to make them a guide for anybody's life. Reading a book and choosing to get inspiration from it is not problematic. I get inspiration from people like, dang, why can't I remember his name? But authors, books all the time. I get inspiration from movies, but I don't take them and say,
so
I should live my life by that, right? Can't remember, right? And it's a famous guy. If I say his name now, everybody like, dude, how could you not remember his name? Stephen King. There it is. Love Stephen King.
Good one.
And I find I find storytelling, because that's what it is. Like, I think many believers, they put the Bible in a special category that it doesn't actually exist in. There's nothing unique about it from any other writing of humanity. So when you say there's some things in there that inspire me, that's the same reason there's some things in songs that inspire us. You mentioned earlier that you like Buddhism because there's mantras that you can listen to when you're depressed. Every human on the fucking planet does that without a religion.
Yeah.
Most people, when they're going through something, they find something to listen to. That's not a religious thing. One of my biggest issues with religion is that we try to make these special categories that don't exist and say, this gives me something that nothing else does. And it's just not true. It's now telling you that this is more efficacious than these other things without having to prove it. And that's dangerous, you know? So yeah, I couldn't find it. If we're treating it like any other book, then it wouldn't even be a conversation. Plenty of people have, Herodotus on their shelves. Plenty of people have Star Wars on their shelves, and plenty of people derive great joy from those stories. Plenty of people pull life lessons from those stories. So why are we treating the Bible like, because it has some life lessons, that it's somehow superior than any of these other stories? That's a fallacious claim that comes from the delusional people who put this stuff up in the first place. And I'll just kind of leave it there,
Yeah. The same way, like, I don't know, I can be inspired by some things in Harry Potter, but there's the problematic stuff about the author, which we will not forget. Same way we should look critically at the Bible or any other scripture, right? So what I'm getting at is, like, for example, me in my life, I don't make my life goal to go on and knock out Bibles from people's hands, right? But I do like critical thinking. I do, and that's why I follow you guys and see the content and all that, because I want to see how I can help people be critical thinkers. So I guess what you're getting at is if you analyze most religions, or most likely all of them, in a critical way, you won't find like I said, you can find inspiration in many other things, like, I don't know, science or nature, right? Okay. So yeah, that's what I'm getting at. Like, I consider myself a theist. I still, well, not theist, agnostic, so to speak.
Agnostic.
I have a religion. I mean, even Buddhism itself is kind of agnostic. The Buddha once said, I don't know if God is real. I cannot know. Why would I care? I'm gonna be good. And for example, that's the other part I was trying to get at. As a Buddhist, kind of not serious Buddhist, but I like the things. What's your position on those sorts of religions? Like, I know Christianity is like super sus, and all the Abrahamic religions are super sus. What's your position, for example, in Buddhism, which is obviously there's like sketchy stuff all there, but I don't know. It's a religion that I feel it's more grounded into the aspect of question everything, go for insight, etc., which are, I don't know, more critical thinking things. So what would be your position into those kinds of beliefs?
I actually do not have a problem with religion as a whole. My issue ultimately is superstition. But also, I don't allow myself to pretend to know things that I don't know. And so I'm not as well versed in Buddhism as I'd like to be, or other religions. I can speak at length about Christianity and many of the Abrahamic faiths. So I wouldn't know enough about Buddhism to say where it stands. But what I will say, I measure the utility of a religion not by what it teaches you to believe. To me, that's the problematic part. Like, that's the problematic part. When anything that is presented as a path is a little problematic for me, because it seems like it's going to encroach on people's autonomy, their agency, and it's going to trap their thinking, which is at that moment the opposite of critical thinking. So for me, when I see a religion, the utility of a religion from a sociological perspective is not what it teaches you to believe about life, but it is how it empowers you to operate with others. And so that is the value that I'd measure any religion by. If there is a religion where we're gathering to help support our community, where we're gathering to feed the poor, where we're gathering to help single mothers in our area, where we're gathering to build after school programs, then you know what? I see mass utility in that. But if there's a religion where its main claim is, I'm going to tell you something that nobody else can tell you, then this is just mental masturbation. This is not actual religion. And that concerns me, because what you end up getting is a bunch of people who call themselves enlightened while doing very little to actually help the world that they live in. And so, again, I can't speak much about Buddhism, but that would be the utility of measurement that I would use.
Okay, so yeah, in the sense that many religions turn to the political side, in the sense that they try to go to communities, control, all that. So the only sense in which a religion could be useful is if that was done good, but at the same time, the higher plane is good morality, which doesn't come from religion, right? So would make, I don't know, I think there was a quote from...
One caveat to all that. I think it's really important to point out that there is no definition of the word religion that actually functions. And so if we were really seriously like digging into this I don't think it's necessary, but if I was going to pick nits here and I would listen to what Darante said and I would agree wholeheartedly, and then I would be like, this sounds more like a culture than a religion.
Yep.
And where's is it? And so and you could pull that apart. And because I'm going to sit here and say, hey, I don't agree with religions at all. I don't like religions in general, because I ascribe that intent. When I say religion, I mean that in a colloquial way that pretty much everybody else would talk about. But like, it involves supernatural beliefs, which Darante was careful to say that's what he's opposed to. Supernatural beliefs, superstitious beliefs, practices and things and rituals that don't comport with reality and don't help anybody. And like, I think the thing that I'm drawing the most from this is just like this idea that religion does not have a monopoly on community. It doesn't have a monopoly on peace. It doesn't have a monopoly on hope. It doesn't have a monopoly on comfort. It doesn't have a monopoly on family. It doesn't have a monopoly on values. Doesn't have a monopoly on morality. None of that. You're able to get all of those things without a religion, and you're able to build community around those things. You're able to build culture around those things. You don't need the baggage of the religion. That, I think, is what Darante and I can definitely align on. I wanted to throw that out there because I can see the comment section before the video goes out, and I know somebody's going to be out there like, well, my Christianity does these things, and also I believe in the slave god. You know what I mean? And so like, I just want to be sure get out there. There's the perspectives on this and stuff. And I think everything Darante said was perfect. I just wanted to throw in the different angle of saying the same thing for the comment section that will be dumb.
Absolutely.
You're having a much better conversation than I'm having.
Yeah, and it's a good caveat because, like I said, there's many interpretations of religion. I think I heard something about comes from religare, which means like to be aligned with, or to be like not aligned, close to something like that. So in a sense, you can say, oh, nature is my religion because I feel close to it and I understand whatever. Yeah, I mean, you can be nitpicky about that. What I was getting at is there's a quote, I think I heard it from you, Forrest, in a video. Some scientists said that God, there's no need for for me for that hypothesis about God, something like that, something about the lines
That
of
was
I don't need that.
Laplace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
so in the
Laplace.
sense-
Yeah, it was Napoleon asked him why in all of his models of physics and of the universe and other things he never mentioned God, and he said it works just fine without that hypothesis.
Yeah, exactly. So in the sense, I think what I was trying to get in at is the purpose of producing content, going out about critical thinking, clashing with these people who are super anti-critical thinking, and kind of, for lack of a better word, humiliate them, in which some cases is super satisfactory. And seeing that as a positive, because I always try to strive. Okay, what's positive about this? One thing I would say, sometimes I feel from atheists who make content or whatever, especially I don't want to throw shade at anyone, but especially Richard Dawkins, I feel he sometimes like crosses the line between.
You're allowed to throw shade at Richard Dawkins on this channel.
Thank you. Thank you. He crosses the line between being like, critical thinker and combative and all that, and to being just a bully, and to being like obnoxiously, actually, that sort of guy.
Yeah.
And I feel sometimes that pushes people away. What the only thing that I would say is like sometimes I feel not you guys, actually I do enjoy the content, but I feel sometimes we can get into that space, into battling so much dumb people, that we treat everyone that doesn't concord with the critical thinking very badly. Like and when you push someone, sorry.
I was just gonna say there's different ways to do it. Like on my channel, I try to not talk about religion directly. I'll bring up the Bible or my beef with Christianity or whatever if I'm responding to a video of someone saying the Bible's perfect and beautiful and true and is the only good word, and evolution's so evil and bad, and evolution is what led to the Holocaust and all this dumb shit. No, I'm like, all right, hey, here's this shit in the Bible that's just as fucking evil as what you're claiming I do. Here's all these Christians that did evil shit. Here's all these evil things that, that's a way that I would do that. But I try to be a lot softer, and the reason for that is just it's the target audience. The target audience for my channel is largely people who are on the fence, people who don't know that much about evolution, who have only been taught about evolution through the John and Jane videos that I respond to. And they are now taking that step out into the water, that leap of faith, and they're wanting to know what is the actual response to this? Why are so many scientists against what I think is very clearly the evidence for creationism? On this channel, however, the point is to have a good conversation. And a lot of the time, good conversations can look like arguments. They're not always pleasant. Sometimes they get heated and serious. On the last, it was either the last call or the call before, I don't remember, but we had that guy saying the dumb shit about, consciousness and light in a box and all that stuff. I was really passionate because it made no fucking sense. And I'm very excited about learning. I want to get it out. I want to understand. I'm very, very heated. And then take it further back where you had the guy talking about slavery. And I was very calm because I wasn't passionate about that conversation at all. It was just, it was say, hey, fuck you. That sucks.
Yeah.
I'm not interested. I'm not invested. You're a piece of shit. And like you see this kind of a lot of variation on this channel because we have a different intention. The different intent, we are still looking for people on the fence, but we're also, the target audience isn't 100% fence sitters. The target audience also is people who are solidly in those beliefs and need somebody like Hitchens or Dawkins or other, sometimes people who are assholes, to kind of shake them out of it a little bit and say, listen, this sounds fucking awful. And yeah, you can come in and I don't think you're doing this, but like you can be the tone police on us and say like, hey, just this kind of sucks. You kind of hurt my feelings with this. But if the message was effective, and oftentimes it is, I think it's worth it, the collateral damage occasionally, rather than trying to put on kid gloves and very, very softly say, listen, Jesus is great. I just don't really know if he's real, I can be like, hey, fuck this, you know what I mean? Fuck this slave god. Fuck this genocide god. By the way, I mentioned earlier that religion doesn't have a definition, and you gave one that was kind of fun. This is my graduate school anthropology textbook, and it defines religion as ideas and practices which postulate reality beyond that which is immediately available to the senses. Congratulations. Microbiology and chemistry are now religions because they talk about atoms and cells and shit that aren't immediately available to the senses. There just isn't a good definition for the shit.
Man.
Yeah, now you're religious somehow.
Yep.
According to Jordan
Okay.
Peterson,
Yeah.
we all are.
Exactly.
Oh, that is-
According to
Look at
Jordan
Dragon
Peterson, we're all
Slayer.
lobsters.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that's the type of people, like, if someone like bashes him out, I'm super fine with that. And like I said, there's a point in it's just tone policing, and I don't agree with that. I'm super against like liberalism in that sense. That's super lukewarm and let's treat people kindly. No, sometimes you gotta shake people. I was just raising the question about sometimes if it's so pervasive, sometimes you have to look about optics, right? And like I said, there's many people who go out there and do kind of are aware of the tone and try to knock it down a notch if the reason calls for it. But yeah, if someone is coming here and defending slavery, no. So yeah, I get what you got.
Yeah. Anyway, we got a few other calls we got to get to, but unless,
go ahead.
Darante, do you have anything else at the end?
I was just going to quickly remind Kisu, just keep in mind that everything isn't for everybody. We're all different people. And so there are always going to be things that I'm going to look at and be like, oh, that would not work on me. But all you got to do is do a quick scroll through the comments and you find that it works perfectly for somebody else. And so that's always something that I always try to keep in mind, even when I see people doing things that I'm like, oh, man, why are they doing that? And I'm like, that would never work on me. And I'm like, well, there's 8 billion people on this planet and we all like different things. Some people like McDonald's, some people like Burger King. And so that's one thing that I keep in mind, which I know you see some things and it's like, why are they doing that? What I encourage people to do is like, if you think it should be done differently, do that. Bring that to the space. And that's actually going to be just a much better work because we can all work together either way. Especially even when you look at the line, some of us are more patient. Some of us are like hotheads. I'm both. Like I can be patient and I can be a hothead. I'm everything for everybody, But no, that was the only thing I wanted to add there. But this was a nice conversation, Kisu. Thanks for calling in, man.
No problem. Hope it was like a break from the crazies and all that.
Yeah.
To get back to it. Thank you very much for taking me.
Thank you, man. Have a great one.
You too. Bye.
I was writing down, we're all different people. Darante LaMar, 2025.
Oh, man. That's hilarious.
Let's jump right in to this person's been waiting for a real long time. Let's talk to Steve, who's been on the line for well over an hour. Pronoun see him, calling in all the way from magical upside down land of Australia, who would like to discuss how we evaluate competing hypotheses for the existence of self, why the God hypothesis deserves consideration alongside naturalistic explanations when examining fundamental questions about reality. That's everything that's written in there. Sounds neat.
Okay.
Steve, you're on the line with Forrest and Darante. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing quite well. Yourself?
I'm doing all right.
Doing wonderful.
Doing all right.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me. So yeah, you've read out there what I was wanting to talk about. So yeah, I guess like when I think about all of the possible sort of, I guess, hypotheses for explaining existence, like there's really only like a handful of categories. Like there's like cyclic models, there's random, spontaneous emergence, and then there's the designer hypothesis. And I guess there's simulation theory as well, but that's kind of like on another dimension of explaining things. But and then there's of course there's just like we just have no idea. But there's not really that too many major like different categories of these explanatory hypotheses. And I feel like that the design one is just often written off way too dismissed way too easily in a lot of cases. Whereas I'd hear like a atheist, for example, happily jump into an explanation of the multiverse theory to explain the fine-tuning argument and that sort of thing. And like, I don't see why that is any better than having a description appealing to a designer. And the reason I say this is because, first of all, we have examples in our reality of intelligence that has emerged as an emerged property, and we observe that in ourselves. So there's no example closer to home, really, that we see that intelligence can exist. And so to totally write that off as, oh no, that's supernatural, having an intelligent designer, for me, that just sounds pretty crazy just to write that off so easily.
I think the big thing for me is that, like, it's not that I'm writing off any kind of intelligent design or something like that. I have no good reason to assume to write it on to believe that that's a possibility. So when we talk about things like, you know, the Big Bang, for example, and you ask what's before the Big Bang, I don't have any answers for you. I've got nothing. I got a big bag of I don't know. And there are some physicists and cosmologists and shit out there that do know a lot of stuff about that, way more than I possibly could as a biologist. I don't know anything about that shit. And they're like, well, here's some options. Here's this multiverse idea. And here's this, you know, the universe has always existed in some way idea. And here's this quantum fluctuation, whatever the hell idea. And like, they are paid a lot of money to study those things, and they're saying those words. And I'm like, neat. I don't know about that stuff, but I trust the education of the people who do say those things. And I know how science works enough to understand that they're not just saying that shit for fun. So like, maybe there's something there. I've yet to hear any actual evidence be brought forth for any kind of a designer, any kind of intelligence, any kind of God, any kind of being outside of space and time, or even the existence of whatever could be outside of space and time. I've yet to hear any actual reason to believe any of those things exist. And so I'm not going to count them as an equally possible hypothesis, or even give them really any consideration at all, any more than I would. You said the simulation theory is just this kind of other thing. Like, well, fuck, man, there's exactly as much evidence and exactly as much falsifiability behind the simulation hypothesis as there is about the God hypothesis, which is none and none. There's no evidence and there's no way to falsify it. So should I sit here and consider it seriously, or should I only consider things that I have a good reason to believe in? And so that's kind of where I'm at with it. It's like, it's not that I'm just out of hand saying, all right, I know for sure there's no God. It's that anytime somebody presents a God argument, the best they can possibly do is to try to dismiss evidence. They can try to dismiss positive evidence for other explanations. There is yet to be any positive evidence for their explanation. They have no evidence supporting this idea of God, but they try to make bad arguments to dismiss the Big Bang or whatever else. And I'm sorry, X equals 0 is not the same thing as Y equals 1. Even if we throw out the Big Bang, even if we throw out evolution, if we throw out everything, and we know absolutely nothing besides the fact that I am here and it appears that the universe is as well. If that's all I've got to go off of, I still have no reason to believe in God.
Okay, but I guess like what I'm kind of getting to is that at least agnostic is the correct position, and I think that a lot of these people take on the atheist position of there is no God. To me, that's irrational because it's a valid hypothesis. It's like looking at a set of hypotheses and discarding.
Hold up, Steve. Forrest literally just defined how it was not a valid hypothesis. Mm-hmm. It's not a valid hypothesis. And then you just came back and said, well, it is a valid hypothesis, which demonstrates you're not actually listening, right?
I also want to point out, I'm not saying there definitely is no God either. I thought I made that clear, but just in case I didn't, I'm saying I have no good reason to believe there is such a thing as a God. And so I'm just living my life as if there isn't, and it hasn't failed me yet. I'm not saying for sure there isn't, because I would need evidence for that claim as well. But
That's right.
there's
And
no
that-
reason to believe in a God, and there's no backing for that hypothesis. There's no reason to consider that hypothesis. It's not sound, it's not valid, it's not helpful.
Well, this is the hypothesis that I'm talking about, is that something resembling intelligence set up the conditions for the beginning of the universe. And that explains the fine-tuning problem.
It does not.
And
So does
Well,
the
it's
simulation
not-
theory.
yes, exactly.
Saying that we're all in a computer simulation also explains the fine-tuning problem you're presenting. Do you give the idea that we could all be in a video game with VR headsets that we forgot that we're wearing? Do you give that as much consideration and take that as seriously as your claims about God?
Yes.
Okay, well then you're more honest than most theists we talk to about that. But I still say, at the end of the day, I would still say I also give the idea that we're all in a video game as much consideration and take it as seriously as I do the idea about God, which is not at all, because there's no evidence and it's unfalsifiable.
Yeah, but we can never. It's unfalsifiable. Correct. It's unfalsifiable. That's the problem we have with this issue of trying to explain existence, because science can only go so far. We can never explain.
I think you might have a misunderstanding of what unfalsifiable means in this context. It doesn't mean that it's always not going to be true. It means that this is, for this specific claim, there's no way to demonstrate whether it's true or not. That's not specific to just God claims. There are several claims that are unfalsifiable. Typically, most claims based in bullshit end up being unfalsifiable. That's kind of a staple of that.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. That science, when we're trying to explain this particular issue, we can't use science because science can't test things beyond our reality.
So what are you using?
What is the evidence that there is anything beyond our reality to test?
Wait a minute, I haven't said anything about that yet. I'm only talking about what are the options.
You literally just said that.
You just said science can't test anything beyond our reality. What leads you to believe that there is anything beyond our reality which could be tested?
I don't think that.
Then what's the problem?
All I'm saying is that. So you said before that it's not a hypothesis. How do you describe what a hypothesis is?
Hypothesis is a guess. It's a question. Yeah, it's an idea. It's an explanation, a proposed explanation for observed phenomena, backed by some kind of like serious grounding, some sort of education, some sort of background in that area that allows you to say, okay, this could be the cause of that. This could be connected to that, whatever it is. And then the idea is you need to be able to demonstrate that that is something worth testing. A hypothesis needs to be falsifiable in order for it to be worth considering. And if it's not, then it isn't. If I'm doing a science experiment and I'm trying to figure out, pick your favorite thing. There's a crater on the moon that showed up, and I want to figure out what's going on. And there's a couple hypotheses. One of them is there was a meteor impact there, and the other hypothesis is it was motherfucking fairies. They showed up on the moon and they dug a big old hole. Okay, I can test the meteor thing. I can go there and look at what's on the ground. I can watch the tape. We're recording the moon all the time. I can watch that. Whatever. How the fuck do I test the fairy thing? You know what I mean? It's not falsifiable, so I can't. It's not a good hypothesis. And especially if I have good evidence for a naturalistic explanation, a supernatural explanation may be more explanatory. The explanation of God controlling everything and designing everything, that's the most explanatory hypothesis possible. This motherfucker did it. That's the explanation for every question in the universe. This guy did it. We got it. We've solved the grand theory of everything. But if it can't be tested in any way, and we actually have good evidence going in the other direction, you can come back and say, yeah, well, God set the universe up to look this way, to make it look natural. Or evolution is just God's control over how species change. Or, yeah, the Big Bang was God farting, and that's what we're seeing. That's what happened. Whatever you want to do, you can post hoc rationalize it. But at the end of the day, you have the same problem. It's unfalsifiable, and there's no good evidence for it. So why the fuck do you believe it? There's no reason to.
Right, but if you had a one fairy captured in a jar, and it's like, wow, we found a fairy, and
then we'd have something to talk about.
Like,
okay.
So
then we'd have something to talk about. Do you have a God in a jar that we can talk about?
I would love to see God in a jar, man.
Well,
wait on the segue.
My scenario, the jar is what I present.
One jar.
I don't know what's funny about that.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, you may not be in the same horrible internet that we're in, but One Guy, One Jar is an old internet video of a guy sticking a jar up his ass and it breaks and there's blood and it's horrible. And so that's what I'm laughing at now. One God, One Jar. It's a bad time.
Oh,
Thank you for making me explain that. I'm so sorry to everyone listening.
That was the Big Bang right there.
That was
definitely in a different corner of the internet than you then.
Oh, God.
I guess in my example, that would be what I presented at the very beginning. Okay, so we observe that intelligence exists, okay, because we see that in our reality. So all I'm saying is that if it exists here, there's absolutely no reason to say it cannot exist there, because that sounds ridiculous.
Where is there? Where is there?
Well, when I say there, the problem is when we're talking about anything outside of our reality, we don't have really the words to describe stuff. But I'm just saying,
because we don't have any evidence that there is anything outside of our reality. You're literally just making stuff up. You're assuming something exists. And this is often the problem with belief and study. You know, like if you believe, you literally are. What is the evidence that there is something outside of reality?
Bro, I'm not assuming that. Why are you assuming
okay, so what is your
that?
That's literally why I just asked you the question, Steve. What is your evidence that there is something outside of reality?
It's not an assumption there is something there.
Sir, answer the question. What is your evidence that there is something outside of reality?
There is no evidence. We don't have evidence. We don't have evidence.
So that's why I say it's an assumption, because you don't have any evidence. This is a speculation at this moment.
It would be an assumption if I assumed there was something out beyond existence.
But here's the thing that we're hung up on, man, is that like you're saying if you're how should I phrase this? I'm trying not to straw man what you're saying, but like what I'm getting from you is maybe in this other dimension outside of reality, the rules are different and things work differently. And we're like, is there such a thing as this other dimension? And you're like, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, neither do I. So why do we care? Why are we talking? Why are we discussing it? Like we have every single process, every single thing we have ever studied in the entire universe is natural and has a naturalistic explanation and a naturalistic mechanism. So like, we've got it. We have no reason to assume anything else. And if we have evidence, if we get a fairy in a jar, we'll change our minds and we'll ask different questions. But until that point, there's no reason to even entertain the idea. And what you're doing, I understand you're not asserting that there is this other dimension or that there is this other God or that there is any, I understand that. But you are doing the hard work of trying to figure out, well, what's this guy like? And what's it like in this reality? And you're doing all this hard work and heavy lifting of trying to figure out the rules of a universe that you don't know exists and you don't even have any reason to believe exists. So like that's what we're hung up on.
Raw man, when have I asserted anything about the nature of them?
You didn't. What you're saying, I didn't say you did. What you're saying here is that, like, in this place outside of reality, the rules might be different. Okay, if gnomes exist, they might floss their teeth with cotton candy. That's not worth discussing. It's not worth having a conversation about because we don't know that gnomes exist. So, like, the first question should be, does this extra reality plane exist in the first place? Then, what is it like there? And there's no reason to waste any brain power at all thinking about what it might be like in this other place. And there's no reason for me to consider that as an explanation if I don't have a reason to believe that it exists in the first place. I certainly don't have a reason to believe that some guy lives there. So, like, there's no reason for me to think about, like, oh, well, maybe God did this and that. And what are the implications? Maybe I should really consider this creation thing. If I have no reason to believe any of this stuff exists in the first place, why the hell would I care about how it works?
All I'm really saying is that completely writing off that existence could potentially be explained by something that resembles intelligence, some sort of force that resembles intelligence, had a hand in playing. Writing that off, and I say resembles intelligence because that's the only trait we can use to explain certain things like the fine-tuning argument and that sort of thing. But I think writing that off completely is intellectually dishonest.
Well, that sounds like a personal problem. Because Forrest did highlight at the beginning that it's not being written off. There's no reason that supports it. You know, it's like you're saying, I want people to believe this because I believe it. But like, and this is what Forrest opened this conversation with. There's no information that sustains this. Your argument is like almost everybody else's argument for this. It's simply based on incredulity, that I can't believe that this world could exist without a designer. Fine, that is a personal problem. But for you to then say other people should believe what I believe just because I believe it, even though I don't care enough about it to actually research it, to actually study this thing out, I'm just going to believe it and say that's the case. Yeah. I'm just demonstrating what you've demonstrated. I'm identifying what you've demonstrated in this conversation. When you open your mouth, you reveal what you've learned. When you speak, you reveal what you know and what you actually don't know. And so you have demonstrated that you've said several times, I don't have any evidence. I just think this. This is your speculation. That's all it is. And to say, well, that should hold equal weight with people who are actually out there doing the research, that's incredibly childish.
So you don't think that it's... So you've got people out there, it's a difficult thing to be, like, quote unquote, researching. Like, we just may not be able to even... What do you mean, why?
This just sounds like the invisible dragon in my garage argument. I have a dragon in my garage, but he's invisible. Well, put some dust on the ground and let's see if we can see his footprints. Well, he's floating. It's not complex because it's complex. It's complex because there's no reason for it in the first place. So everybody who's commenting on it is just making shit up.
See, that's the thing, is like, we're not... You're presenting this thing you keep saying over and over, that, like, we shouldn't write off this concept of a creator, of something resembling intelligence. I'm sorry, that's not how thinking works in a scientific sense. You need a reason to write something in. You need a reason to assume something in the first place, or to even give something the time of day. The reason why I don't believe in the flying spaghetti monster is the same reason I don't believe in any intelligent designer. It's not because it's so silly and ridiculous and it could never possibly be. It's because there's no reason to believe that exists, so I don't. If I have a Christmas present in the morning, if I come out to my living room on Christmas Day and I have a Christmas present there, and I know that I didn't buy it, that's no reason to believe in Santa Claus. That just because, hey, I'm considering all the options, right? No. I would need to believe that a Santa Claus existed first, and then I can factor in, okay, did my wife get this? Did my friend get this? Or did Santa Claus get this? And if I have no reason to believe in Santa Claus, and I'm still saying, did my wife get this or did Santa Claus get this? Then I'm just wasting my own time by thinking about a hypothesis that makes no fucking sense, and that I have no reason to test in the first place, and couldn't test even if I wanted to.
I agree with what you're saying. Like, for example, a flying spaghetti monster, there is no explanatory power behind that. It's just an assertion
Of course there is.
some random
The flying
monster.
spaghetti monster made everything. His noodly appendage created the world. I'm wearing him on my shirt at this moment.
There's no explanatory power. Because why does it have to be made of spaghetti?
Why did God have to be made of whatever the fuck God's made of?
I didn't say what he's made of.
I didn't say what the flying spaghetti monster's made of. Maybe he just looks like spaghetti, but it isn't actually spaghetti. Maybe it is actually spaghetti because that's the form that he chose to take.
But what does that attribute explain?
The attribute doesn't explain jack shit besides what it looks like.
Exactly.
But I'm just saying he made everything. And the attributes of God, any attributes of God don't explain anything about God besides what God is. At the end of the day, the same argument. Here's this thing that exists outside of reality that has magical powers that we don't understand that made everyththing. And you can change it out for God or a flying spaghetti monster or any of the other gods that you don't believe in. I'm not straw manning. I'm repeating.
You're straw manning. I'm talking about
what exactly.
He knows the word straw man. Steve learned the word.
What exactly did I just say that was a straw man?
Well, because I've only mentioned one explanatory property, which is something that resembles intelligence.
Right. He's intelligent. He resembles intelligence, and he created stuff. That's all we've got.
That's the only property.
Right. So if I add any other properties to that,
spaghetti monster.
Yes, it is, Steve. Because if I add any other properties to that, it resembles
no explanatory power.
Steve, I am in the middle of explaining to you why you are wrong. I would appreciate if you'd let me finish. I am not strawmanning you because what you've given me here is that it resembles intelligence and it created things. Those are the two things that this God or whatever the fuck has. At that point, that is the entire explanation. It's intelligent or resembles intelligence at least, and it made the things. Everything else that you add onto that is redundant. What does he look like? How tall is he? What does he like? Ska? Like anything else you say about this God.
I told you, and I said initially that I'm not talking about nature. There's only one thing I'm talking about.
I just said that you didn't say that. I literally just said that you can add these concepts on and it changes nothing. I didn't say you say that.
Okay,
I am not straw manning you.
Okay, fair enough. I thought you were saying
gravy.
You do this.
What I am trying to get across to you is that if you add any attributes, it doesn't matter. And similarly, if I'm talking about a Christmas present, and I say, Steve, shut the fuck up. If I'm talking about a Christmas present, and I say, I don't know where this present came from, so maybe it's Santa Claus, all I have to say is it's some creature with something resembling intelligence that can produce Christmas presents and deliver them. It could be Santa Claus. It could be Nikolaus. It could be some other deity. It could be a flying spaghetti Christmas demon. It could be whatever the fuck it wants. It doesn't matter. The same assertion has been made. Something with something resembling intelligence did a thing that could easily be explained by natural processes. I have no reason to believe in the supernatural thing. I have every reason to believe in the natural thing. Therefore, it makes no sense to waste any intellectual time considering the possibility of the flying spaghetti Christmas demon or God or Krishna or whatever the fuck else. It makes no difference to think about the simulation or maybe it's a video game or maybe it's Jesus or maybe it's Allah or maybe because you have to first prove that those things are at the very least possible and more importantly, real. Then you can start talking about how they actually do.
Is intelligence possible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Now, please give me an example of intelligence existing at the beginning of the universe.
Why does it need to be an example of that? I'm just giving an example that intelligence exists.
Yes. So does a Honda Civic. Do you think that there was a Honda Civic at the time of the Big Bang, Steve?
Well, what's the explanatory power behind a Honda Civic being there?
I am asking you a question. The yes or no answer would be appreciated. Is there any reason to believe that there may have been a Honda Civic at the time of the Big Bang?
There is no reason to believe that.
So should I consider that as part of the explanation for the universe?
No.
Right. There is also no reason to believe that there was any intelligence at the beginning of the universe. There's no reason to believe in any extraplanar existences. There is no reason to believe in any intelligence at the beginning of the universe. There is no reason to believe in any extraplanar existence. There is no, because things that have intelligence didn't exist yet.
But there is reason to consider it.
No, there isn't.
No.
Because in order to consider it, you would first need to demonstrate that it is possible. In a universe which is billions of degrees hot, in which the only things that exist are at the very, very beginning, the first things that come into existence are some hydrogen atoms. Because it's so hot that all these particles are just awash in a sea of nothingness. You're telling me there was a brain?
Well,
no.
I'm not. Do you realize how simple a one singular neuron is?
It is not simple at all.
It can be.
It can. How? No, tell me. No, seriously, my graduate training in neuroanatomy would love to be enlightened a little bit further. Tell me how a simple neuron can exist at the Big Bang, made of nothing but hydrogen. What does that look like?
So you've heard of AI, right?
Sure.
And AI is a neural network. Do you know how programmatically a neuron works?
Oh, we're talking about computer programs, not actual neurons. So when I say intelligence, we could be talking about computers, which, by the way, also didn't exist at the Big Bang.
You need to understand how simple a neuron can be. And
how simple can a neuron be, Steve? Exactly how simple. What is the simplest neuron? Enlighten me.
Well, you have an input, then there's an activation function and an output.
So a transistor.
Well, I'm not too sure exactly how a transistor works, but
you just described it.
I think it might be a transistor.
So how many transistors existed at the beginning of the universe, Steve?
Well, you could even say like the accumulation of electricity above the clouds into the cloud, and then the lightning is the output. So the activation.
How many clouds existed at the Big Bang, Steve?
The point I'm making is that how it manifests, how this neuron will manifest, is not known to us. But we do know that at the most simplest form, a neuron is actually very simple structure.
No, it is not.
Yes,
as someone who actually gives a damn about this stuff, no, it is not. And here's the thing, Steve. At the end of the day, all you are continuing to say is, maybe there was a thing that I have no evidence for.
Well,
and I'm sorry, that is not worth anybody's time. I don't understand how it's worth yours.
Yeah.
Well, let's just agree to disagree then and leave it there.
Okay, great. 30 minutes.
Yep.
And we're back at, I don't think you should believe in things you don't have a reason to believe in. And you're still at, maybe Jesus. What a great conversation.
I didn't say maybe Jesus, bro. Didn't say that.
Oh, these people.
Yep.
Yikes,
we are back
bruh.
here because you're not willing to. I think you're just.
Yes, we are not willing to believe stuff just because you believe it. Yes, you are absolutely correct. Just because you had a thought does not mean everybody else has to agree with it, especially when you haven't even had the sincerity to do the due diligence to actually think this stuff through, or even actually go pull some information from other people who support this idea. You literally spent 30 minutes just making another claim after another one, never actually addressing the flaws in your thinking. And so even when the
I'm
flaws are
addressing
called
what's
out, you
going on.
just kept moving right on.
I keep addressing your issues, and
I don't even
And
think
then
you know what our
you're-
issues are.
Yeah, I don't think so either, because you keep just repeating the same thing.
Yep.
You compared my argument to a flying spaghetti monster. That's totally
Yes,
ridiculous.
because it's
Absolutely
the same argument.
It is the
It's
exact
exactly
same argument.
I also compared your argument to Santa Claus because it's the same argument.
Also,
Here's
No, it's
something
not.
that I don't understand. Here's a potential explanation that I have no reason to believe in. So maybe it's that. I'm sorry. That's not how thinking works, Steve.
It is not.
Okay. All right
Yep.
then. No worries. I'll leave it there.
Try again next time. So far, like this has been incredibly intellectually unsatisfying, and I hope next time you have something more interesting to shove at us, because like right now, literally all I've got is I have no reason to believe this, so you should try believing it. That's what I've learned from this argument.
Okay. Well,
All right, take care, Steve.
My friend.
Woof. Just a
Man.
rough time.
Oh man. I think I almost got up out of my chair at one point.
I just wanted. Oh my god, dude! I just want to go to bed. It's so frustrating. Neurons are really simple, don't you know? Neurons are incredibly simple things. Wow.
Oh man. Oh.
I'm gonna go tell my neuroanatomy professor, Dr. Gujar, about how simple neurons can be. They're so simple they could exist in the form of an AI transistor at the Big Bang, whatever the fuck any of that means. Neat,
man. Such a wild ride
communicating
there.
neuron? What kind of neuron was it? Was it unipolar? Was it pseudo-unipolar? Was it multipolar? What was it? Fuck me, dude.
Oh my goodness, man.
We've got 2 callers left on the line. One of them's waiting for 2 goddamn hours. I'm going to take them next, even though we usually prioritize theist calls, and this is technically an agnostic call. We're going to take them next. Then there is one theist who is calling in. We have one person in the call-in queue, and we have a few lines open, but they are for theists only. We have several people in the chat who have already had to be muted and told that this is not the place to debate. The chat is not the place to debate. Nobody wants to give a damn about nobody wants to give a damn. Nobody gives a damn about your arguments in the chat. You are here to call in to us, the hosts, and we care about your argument. We would like to hear it and take it very seriously. You hear the past couple of calls, we have taken time to really flesh out what somebody's saying. So give us a call if you'd like to talk about your gods or your beliefs or your supernatural, your wizards or whatever else. This is your chance. And if you don't believe in evolution, or if you do believe in races, or if you think that genders and sexes are the same things, or if you believe whatever other fucking thing, I'm so fucking just fried from that. It's just same thing for 30 minutes. Call us.
It's been a rough ride tonight.
It's been a tough call. It's been a tough show.
Right?
It's been a really tough show. We got slavery's good sometimes. We got God is like light in a box that's not a box or whatever. And we got neurons are very simple and existed at the Big Bang. Yes, all 3 of those were straw men, Steve. That was me dumbing down the arguments for the sake of a joke. Keep up.
Oh, man.
Oh, my glob. Let's talk to Guy, pronouns he, him, calling in from Man Nips. Who is, it says undecided, so this person's on the fence, struggling with reasons not to believe. That's interesting. Guy, you are finally on the line with Darante and Forrest. Thank you for waiting for so very long.
Yes.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
I can
Yes,
hear you
sir.
just fine.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Hello?
All right,
Uh-oh.
hold on. Okay. Can you hear me now?
I could hear you before.
Yes.
Oh, it's worse.
Hello? Damn it.
Fuck, man. You've been on the line for 2 hours. I want to get you on here, but like I can't do this.
Okay, can you guys hear me all right now?
Yes.
Yes, we've been hearing you.
Hello?
Hello.
Do you want to start over
Hello?
for a clip?
I can hear you just fine. Please just start talking.
Okay, great.
Hello. Oh,
All right, I was a fortunate atheist for 40 years. I was raised Christian, but when I was 8, I asked my mom about some contradiction in the Bible, and she just looked at me and said, "Yep." So anyway, I've been atheist forever. I had a dream last night, and if you guys want to hang up on me, I understand. I wouldn't believe it coming from anybody else, but God came to me in the dream looking like Forrest.
Okay.
Real
That was
quickly,
real.
what he said
That was real.
what he says was, just fucking stop it. Get over yourselves. I've never spoken to anybody before. I made the universe because I'm into Beatles.
I mean, that sounds like
It's
a
a
lot
fun
of
dream.
things that, yeah, what a dream. Are you, Guy, I have to ask, are you seriously considering this dream may be a divine thing, or did you wait 2 hours and 14 minutes to be a troll? I don't understand. What's the point of the call?
I waited for that long to say that, and it's total bullshit. I love you, Forrest. You're great. Steve Trees, I love the Forrest. Darante, only recently got started seeing you. Never thought I'd fall in love with a black man. I was hoping I'd get on earlier. I know it wouldn't take much of your time.
Okay, well, have a good day, Guy. Bye.
I'm not mad at that one.
I mean, fuck, man, the commitment. I don't condone
Right?
troll calls, but 2 hours and 15 minutes to say something silly and tell us we're great. All right.
Wow.
Don't do that again. But
Yeah.
thank you.
I banned that number. I'm sure Guy is a nice person, but that wastes the line's money. It wastes our
Yes.
time. Do not do that. You will get banned. I
Yeah.
don't care how nice you are.
Bizarre.
Not mad.
It's true. It's just bizarre.
Yeah, that
I
was
am
odd.
God in your dreams, though, and that's for real.
That is the truth.
Let's talk to Oriel. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Pronouns he, him. Calling in from Menacing Icelanders. Scary. Who says he'd like to support math to suggest that God is real. Oriel.
Okay.
You are on the line with Forrest and Darante. How you doing?
Hi guys, I'm good. How are you? I don't know what Menacing Icelanders is. I think he just typed Michigan. But
Oh, it says MI. I didn't know what else that meant. I figured that's what that was. Yeah,
Gotcha.
MI. I don't know what else that could be.
yeah, no, that's just my good old state. Yeah,
Bizarre.
how are you guys doing?
I don't know
Yeah,
why they would type it that way then. That's dumb. All right, well, tell us about, first of all, Oriel, what God are we talking about today?
Yeah, so that's a pretty complex question. I would kind of put it into realistically numbers, because I'm kind of multi-theist. I believe in the Trinity as like the source of all being and creation, but essentially I feel like any religion besides like really like cults and stuff that's not based on any truth whatsoever, math and geometry essentially is what I'm about. And any religion that kind of follows that bleed through of understanding of the universe and creation is kind of what I'm about. So Christ, obviously, I don't really want to get into him because I feel like that is like really muddy water for this discussion, right? Because if, you know, a man being born like and as saying he's God, like you have to have a leap of faith from understanding what God is, I feel like, to even get there. So I'd rather just avoid that whole principle as a whole and just kind of focus on. I did write down some of what I feel like are the characteristics of God. That would help.
Okay.
Interesting.
So I feel like he's uncaused, he's unconditioned, he's timeless, he's infinite, non-contingent, non-local. He's like the primordial or like absolute reality. omniscient, omnipotent, necessary being, self-existent, ineffable, so beyond words, just the one who is, and the I am, essentially.
Sure.
How did you arrive to those conclusions?
That would probably be mostly from my when I took a class in college on Greek mythology, or Greek like philosophical, like Plato and Socrates and all of them discussing what God is, essentially.
So
Okay.
are these
And
these
just to be correct,
characteristics are based on the concept of God, not necessarily a God? Is that how you're using that?
Well, I think it's important to distinct the two from each other, right? So, like, when I say God with a big G, I'm talking about source or infinite creation that is, like, beyond words and it's ineffable. And when we're talking about, like, lowercase g, I'm talking about, like, primordial forces of nature, which are essentially aspects or rays of God, but not essentially him or it.
How do you
That's the
how do you
primordial
determine
level.
that something is beyond words?
Well, if it's infinite, you can't really, it doesn't matter how many words you put to it. You can certainly try to scaffold it, but at the end of the day, you're just going to be scratching at air.
How do you determine if
Usually.
something is infinite?
Well, it just never ends.
So how would you know that it's infinite?
Because
How
no
would
matter
you be
how
able to
far you
determine that
follow
there
the
is no
line,
end?
because no matter how much effort you put into determining it, it never ends.
How would you
Right,
know
but
that?
like
Though? If you
just to be clear, there.
I mean,
There
we can run
could
AI models
theoretically-
on and try to ask them to count to infinity, and they literally can never finish. So
Sure, but like what I'm saying is there are things like the number Googleplex, right? I could try my whole life to count that number out and I never would, but it's different than infinity, right? So like something
'cause
that you
you would
can
eventually
try
end.
to find the limits of and fail is not the same thing as infinity. I just want to make sure I heard you right. You said that God is omnipotent, omnipresent. Did you say
Yes.
those two?
Yes,
Did you also say omniscient, like all knowing?
yes, yes.
And I can't remember. Did you also say omnibenevolent?
No, but if we're discussing just God, like specifically like the creator of all things, then I would say yes.
Okay, yeah, that's.
Because once you get
wanna
into
make sure I'm
duality,
understanding.
then things got really
You've got
weird.
all the omnis in there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, please continue with Darante. I just wanted to make sure I understood that because that's going to shape a lot of my argument later. I just wanted to understand where we're coming from so I don't mischaracterize the God you believe.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Before we get into that, like I want to get into infinity, but like you guys would agree that we use infinity in mathematical equations, that we use in theories to define like the laws of the universe and creation and all that, right? Like black holes, and we use
100%.
infinity as right.
Yes.
So regardless of me being able to count to it, we use it as a mathematical probability that we just generally agree exists.
Sure, but what Darante was asking you is how have you determined that this God that you believe in is infinite? And it sounds like what you're saying is that you don't actually have any way to measure that or make that determination. You just are putting that forward as an attribute to this God as a philosophical necessity.
Well, that's where we have to get into the math of it. But yes, I would put infinity as a logical description of my God.
Right. Is it a logical one or a measured one is what he's asking.
A logical one if you kind of combine it with Pythagorean mathematics and geometry.
Okay. I have one more quick question before we jump in, if that's okay. Darante, did you have anything else on your train of thought that you wanted to as a precept? Or not precept, as a preliminary? My last preliminary question is, do you, Oriel, have any training or particular talent or expertise in mathematics or geometry?
No, but do I need a PhD to understand math? I mean, I don't.
He didn't ask if you had a PhD.
Not at all. Not at all. I'm just asking you if you have any training in that because I don't. I'm a biologist.
I have a bachelor's in psychology, and that's it.
Okay, great. Durante, you're a sociologist, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
I'm a biologist, so I have some higher level math training, but like I would not call myself a mathematician by any means. So like if we're talking about mathematics and geometry, I just want to make sure we put a pin right here to just say none of us have any expertise in mathematics. We're just talking about abstracts here. And if you ask me like, well, the statistical this, then this, then this, 0% of the people on this call are equipped to actually take that argument seriously. So, like, I just want to make sure we understand that moving forward so that we don't get hung up on talking about math when not a single one of us here can fucking, draw a proper rhombus.
Right. And I just think I don't think you really need to be like a graduate level student in math to really understand what I'm about to dive into. It's more like connecting pieces of puzzles to things you may already find to be true, essentially.
Okay, great.
That sounds bad.
Okay.
Let's get into it.
All right. So essentially, what I'm first coming from is as a God being made up of math, all those numbers essentially. And I heard on their previous call you guys talking about like I forgot what the theory is called, but essentially like that we're living the Matrix or it's a simulation essentially. And
Sure.
those are like, to my knowledge, published papers about that stuff where everything is just zeros and ones, where everything's just ins and outs or on or off switches basically. And that kind of gets into what I have to say about mathematics as well through Pythagorean mathematics.
Okay. I'm just taking some notes.
And then
I gotcha.
also, I'm not going to get into geometry until after the fact because that gets a little more multidimensional. But I also want to just say, like, numbers, right? We discovered them. We didn't invent them. If you go to any language, no matter what they call a number, it's the same number that we're all communicating, right?
Okay.
Right. So
Excuse me.
math is a universal
One day.
language.
I agree that mathematics is largely discovered.
Yes, it's like fire. It's just a universal language. It looks the same to everyone, essentially, if you understand it.
Sure.
All right, so before I get into zeros and ones of creation, so basically breaking down Pythagorean mathematics, the one is represented as the monad, which is like God or source, like the one uncaused cause. And so he's like unity, source. He's indivisible. Everything's divisible by him. And then we get into two, where it gets really crazy with the dyad, which is contrast, polarity, or dualism, where you get ignorance and wisdom. This is quick. It's just going through 1 through 10. 3, the triad,
I don't want to hear all 10.
Triangle.
Yeah.
So just skip to the end of this. Each
the
number
first three are
has
the
some
most
deep.
Important.
Right. If you want to give me 3, you can. But like what I'm trying to get to the end of, like, so it sounds like you're saying each number has this philosophical prescription of like the deeper meaning of the number. Is that fair to summarize what you're saying?
Absolutely. Yeah, there are real world replicas and patterns that exist with these numbers throughout all of creation.
So then where does that take us from there?
Well, and if you don't bring it philosophical, it's not going to work. But 1 goes to 10, right? And 10 is the completion. It's the combination of the 1 and the 0, the something and the nothing. And that binary essentially is where we get into like the Big Bang, right? So like 1 is being, its form, its presence. 0 is like non-being, its void, its potential. And the 2 together is binary code, which like through qubits and all these interesting things, like the left and right hemisphere.
These numbers have meaning. I get it. Where do we go from there? The numbers have meaning. Okay, cool. When I was a kid, I was taught, to think about numbers as symbols to remember number patterns. 1 is a pencil, 2 is a swan. Like, you know what I mean? Like I can give you all these things. It doesn't mean anything. Where do we go with that then? Where does this get us?
Yeah, I feel like if I'm not able to explain these, then are you just looking at them as like anyone can say a number is anything, like, or because like there are these
no,
they actually represent themselves in like.
I'm trying to get to the end of the argument. I'm just trying to fast track us there because if you give us 10 different meanings, Oriel, if you give us a specific meaning, Oriel, if you give us this like philosophical meaning behind each number, and then we get to the end of the argument and you're like, so there, and that's where it ends, then you've wasted a ton of time.
Oh, I understand.
And if your argument is actually a little bit more interesting than that, then I need to judge whether or not it's worth the time to deal with the 10 special fancy meanings of the numbers. Because at the end of the day, what it sounds like immediately at face value is just some guy's philosophy about God placed onto math, and I don't give a fuck. So just get us to the end. When we have the meanings for all the numbers, then what? What does that tell us?
Okay, well, you get back to 0 and 1, essentially, nothing and everything. And so 1 minus 1 is essentially God viewing himself in his first motion from 0. And it's like pulses of unity, basically, like breath.
You're still, I'm sorry, you're still just telling us what numbers represent. Please just get to the point of what does this tell us about whether or not God is real?
Well, I guess if I had to put it into the most smallest terms possible, 1 minus 1 equals 0, and that equals existence. One minus 1 equals infinity, right? Because you have everything between 1 and 1 is the creation of
1
all of the
minus 1
numbers.
does not equal infinity.
Well, it equals all obstacle, like all potential. Plus or minus 1
No, it
equals
does not.
infinity. Like, yes, it
1
does.
minus 1 equals
It's monad
0.
motion
0 is
becomes
not all
duality.
potential.
Right? It's the 0 and 1 coming together and destroying each other. That is all potential. That's beginning and the end being in each other,
Oh,
which is where
That's not
religion
what-
talks about
That's
the
not what
beginning
you
is in
just
the end and the end is in
described.
the beginning. Well,
And
how
even,
is it not?
like, because 1 minus 1 isn't the same thing as 1 plus 0.
1 plus 0 is 1,
1 mi-
right?
Right, but 1 minus 1 is not 1 and 0 coming together to destroy each other. 1 minus 1 is 0, which means the 0 still exists.
1 minus 1 is God coming back to wholeness with himself and destroying himself, and that becoming essentially nothingness from which it came. I mean, 0 is a principle we always talk about with the origin of the universe and Big Bang. We don't know what was before that, and 0 essentially posits that there was nothing before that.
This
Okay,
is nonsense.
you are still just telling us what philosophical meaning the numbers have and what each number represents to you. You are not telling us anything about whether or not a God is real. I could sit here and tell you the number system my dad taught me, where 9 is a pipe. And if you want to remember the word 19, remember a pencil smoking a pipe, because 1 is a pencil and 9 is a pipe. And then
It literally is.
And if you ask me, what does that mean?
Because
I can say, well, it makes sense because 1's a pencil and 9's a pipe. It means nothing. Tell me what actually this tells me about the real world.
Universal language. It doesn't matter if you call it a pipe or whatever. It's still a number that exists in mathematics. It doesn't matter if you're
Yes, it's still a number, but this number isn't a God.
Adding to it.
That's
Well, it's
what
not
I'm
just
trying to
that.
get across.
Is that everything
You're adding
everything in the
meanings to
universe
the
comes
numbers
from
that you
numbers.
haven't demonstrated where the meaning comes from, nor have you demonstrated what you can actually do with the meaning. You're just saying, someone told me these numbers represent something, but you haven't demonstrated how you can actually prove that those numbers actually represent something.
It's through
So
geometry.
yes, when Forrest's father
through
teaches him,
geometry.
yeah, but it's geometry because it's numbers. It's not geometry because you add God to it. It's geometry without the number, without God. You
No,
see?
but when you get into physics and metaphysics,
Okay.
and
What
string
does
theory,
the one?
essentially
What
just
does the one
fractal
represent?
reality is
Oreo. What does the one represent? What does the one represent?
The one represents God. It's the monad. It's the
Okay.
first
How
cause,
do you know that?
form, presence,
Okay. How do
being.
you know that? Oreo. How do you know that?
Because when you have something that's completely by itself, it's non-local. It doesn't have any point of what's the word, perspective, right? You are yourself, and there's no one else to view you. You are just everything, and there is nothing else.
So the number
That's
one
not the
represents
definition of
God.
God you gave us.
Like this is
Well,
amazing.
that's okay. Like I'm not God, and I don't profess to know every aspect of him. But essentially, oneness is being non-local. It is being omnipresent in all things.
Why can't I say 1 is the universe? Because the universe is
You wouldn't be
everything
wrong,
that
though.
is and everything that. Okay, so
'Cause I'm
what's the
saying one is
difference?
God.
And what's the difference? If I say there is no such thing as God, there is just the cosmos. The cosmos is all that ever was and all that ever will be, and 1 represents the cosmos, and 0 represents nothing.
Right.
And 1 minus 1 is the cosmos antithesis against the cosmos, which brings us to nothing. Therefore, the cosmos is all that's real. The cosmos has no agency, has no identity, has no personhood, has no intention, has nothing. None of the attributes
those
prescribed
would
to a
be
god.
lacking claims because we exist. We have intelligence. We have pattern. The universe has patterns. So those last claims are wrong. Before that, it's just semantics. But after that, you started adding in stuff that has no basis in reality as the reality that we exist in.
You defined God as the uncaused cause, the prime mover, something that is all-knowing, all-present, all-loving, and like all these other things. You prescribed agency and personhood and intentionality to God.
Right. But then
So
you started
how
saying
is
that
it?
the universe is unintelligent and just kind of a
No, the universe. There
random
is
chance.
intelligence. There is I didn't say anything about random chance. The universe
Well, that's kinda
has
what it sounded
things
like to me
in it
towards the
with.
end.
No, I'm not at all.
Yep.
Nor have I said anything like that ever. The universe contains things which do possess intelligence. There is intelligence within the universe, but the universe itself as a whole is not an intelligent agent. It's like saying that a book is the word and. There's the word and in the book. The word and is part of the book. Without the word and, the book would not be complete. But the word and is not synonymous with the book itself. So
I would argue
saying
you're
that
saying and
God,
it's the book.
you saying that God is intelligent and is kind and omnibenevolent and all these things, that is prescribing something to God that I am not prescribing or taking away from the universe. You are making a leap where I am not. And I can define my leap with the same numbers,
But
and
even-
it means the same nothing.
Even in just the form of the 1 and the 0, right? The 0 is the circle, and the circle encompasses all things. It's a finite, infinite shape.
Oh my
And the 1
goodness.
is
It's a
a stretched
shape.
line, which through string theory. Right, but if you look at it
There's
symbolically, which I think you're really
shapes.
struggling to do,
They're
This sounds like
Right.
5% stuff.
there is symbolism
in
in
Chinese
that
characters. In
it's reality.
Chinese characters, 1 is also a stretched line, and 2 is
We
2
didn't
stretched
we didn't
lines.
invent the circle. Circles exist everywhere. Every single star and planet
Oh
and
my
moon
goodness.
is literally
We didn't
a
invent
multidimensional
lines
circle.
either. But I'm just
Right, that's
saying,
my point.
you're saying
That's literally
you're
my
saying
point.
that a human
That's
Oriel,
not a point.
you are saying that a
It is, though.
human-made symbol is the same thing as divine eternal
It's not
truth, and
human
it's
made, it's
not.
discovered.
The symbol was not discovered. The symbol was made by humans. The concept of 1 saying I have exactly 1 marker in my hand, that we can argue is a discovered characteristic. And I would argue is a discovered property. But the drawing the shape of a number 1, that is absolutely invented. And by the way, you said 1 is a stretched out line and that's a thing. Some people draw their 1s like this, and those people are sociopaths, and their 1 is just as valid as yours, and it's
Are you
not a
talking about,
single
like, the
stretched out
line at
line.
the bottom
It
stuff?
has lots.
Yeah,
it has
so-
lots of lines involved.
But when 1 moves, right, so in the Holy Trinity, 1 through 3 is basically in religion the same number, right? They exist in the same shape, the triangle, right? Without any one of the others, it's not a triangle. So 1 to 2 is where that line comes from. It's a movement of everything to something, right? So you have to move, and that movement is a line straight towards the other one. And we know that because in a triangle, all 3 lines of the triangle are completely straight, completely equilateral.
What straight line makes a 2, Oriel?
Yeah, okay,
I'll
so
tell
I
you which
actually am
one.
agreeing with you that we invented
In
the numbers, how we look
Chinese.
at them.
In
1
Chinese,
through 2, 3, 4,
2
all of
straight
that.
lines is a 2.
But numbers
Maybe the
manifest through
Chinese
shapes,
know
right?
God. Maybe
let's
the Chinese
just
are
ignore.
gods.
Well,
Oriel,
I mean,
you
to
have
my
an
knowledge,
O at the
Taoists
beginning
don't
of
really
your
have
name.
God.
That O is a circle that encompasses everything. Is there some hidden divine meaning in the shape of the letter of O in your name? What can we?
Well,
what
I
divine
mean,
wisdom
not that I've
can we
given, but
extrapolate?
it is a circle, so
But what if
it is a
some
circle, so it
douchebag
definitely
gives
has
it
divine.
meaning? Then it has the meaning.
Well, I don't know why to be
Oriel,
a douchebag, but like a circle has
you
meaning
waste
inherently.
everybody's time, Oriel, because we've asked you a simple question 13 times, and you
Right,
keep
but
just
then
saying, "Well, you know, one shaped
look,
like this."
Look, I agree. Actually, you're right that we did invent it, how we use like how we actually write down what a number is, 0, 1, 2. But if you look at shapes, back to where I'm getting with geometry, literally a perfect equilateral triangle is only consisting. You can only draw one with straight lines. So, like, literally, when we get into string theory and like everything being vibration, that first line between 1 and 2.
That you are
absolutely,
just
because God is infinite, and there's a lot of crazy things that help connect us to Him.
I am asking you for a coherent argument for the existence of God, and for 20 minutes now, the reason why I'm being a bit of a douche, I'm being a bit silly with, because all you've given me is word associations. This has lines, and lines are like strings, and string theory is a thing.
Yeah,
Okay,
so maybe
that
next,
doesn't mean anything.
maybe
You said a triangle is 3 equilateral lines, and they have to be all the same length, and that's like string. At what point do the lines in a triangle vibrate? What does that connect to anything?
they were vibrating
You're just
before that.
doing word association
They're vibrating before that.
Oh, this is Terrence Howard level now. Yikes.
But I mean, essentially, like if you get all past all that and you get into dodecahedron, because remember, the true expression of numbers
If this
is through
isn't substantiated, why would we keep going further? Like right now,
Why
like
would
you're
it
just
go to
saying, like
because you guys are just saying
Yeah.
it's not, because I can't explain myself well enough, like articulate this well enough. I understand that.
So I mean, if
But
you can't
that's,
explain
like, I'm
yourself well
trying,
enough
and
to
you guys.
articulate it, why would you be the
Well, I'm
person trying to
trying, and
articulate
it's
it?
essentially just the
Instead of
lens
trying
that
to
I'm
do
using,
something that
not
you're
the lens you're
failing at,
comfortable with.
actually go get better at it. Actually say, no, if I'm going
Why
to
would
call in,
That's
I'm going to know what the hell I'm
that's
talking
what I'm
about.
doing right now. I'm
Why would you
trying
even
to sculpt my lens so that it is a point where you can understand it. And
Why
right
would you
now, that's
believe
No,
not
it?
really where
you
I'm
first
doing
have
my
to
best
do it in a
to.
way that you can understand it. If you can't explain
I
it, that is
do.
evidence that you don't understand it. You believe it, but you don't understand it. Articulation is the
No.
byproduct of understanding. If you understand it, you can articulate it.
Well,
You can't
one, this is a
articulate it
pretty
because you do not
fast-paced, hostile
understand it.
environment.
You
I'm
just
arguing against two
believe it.
people. So it's not really like a normal circumstance where it's easy to articulate. Like, this is a
It's a
very
circumstance you
fast-paced.
chose.
And I understand that. And that's why I'm here. And I'm doing my best to bring my perspective down to yours so that we can have some sort of bridge to a common
I
understanding.
have to reject that. You're not bringing
No.
your perspective down to ours. Like you're projecting.
You guys are very physical right now. All of your existence is based on materialistic reductionism.
You have number
Here's
one,
the
you
thing.
don't actually know if that's true because that hasn't even been a
Yeah.
subject of the conversation. You know what I'm saying?
I've seen your other videos, and it's quite clear. It's quite evident.
You've seen my other videos on materialism?
Not you. I haven't. You're the first time I'm actually engaging with you, sir. But Forrest.
Okay, because you said you guys.
Forrest quite a bit.
You said you guys. That,
Yeah,
you know,
I apologize. Yeah, I apologize. That is an assumption I can't make about you.
Yeah, I here's where we're at, man. Is all you have given me thus far is that here are some poetic attachments that you have to numbers. And if you really, really dig into that really hard and squint your eyes, it kind of looks like some physics things sometimes. And that's just not compelling to me. So if there's some part of this that I'm not hearing that you think you could enlighten me on, I would. I'm giving you the time to say it. But as of right now, you've given me nothing. And it's frustrating to me that we've
I
spent
understand what you're
20
looking
minutes. I'm looking for coherence. Like
I understand.
I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated, Oriel, because I keep asking. I get that you have these symbols about like what you think numbers mean. What's the point? And you keep saying, well, the numbers mean things. And like it just hasn't produced anything. You just have poetry.
You love math, right? Math is great. We agree that math is like some form of truth that we can actually grasp that is non-physical.
Oh my goodness. We started
I'm
there.
pretty into
Like
math.
we've already agreed on that.
Right.
Math is
That's
great.
where I'm
Do
saying.
your homework.
So like what I'm understanding is that I can't just tell you what these things are. I need to literally go back and get step by step why they mean what they mean. I'm happy to do that on a later date.
Because there is no way to do that. What you're actually providing here is what's called supreme mathematics. It's called supreme mathematics. I'm very familiar with supreme mathematics, and that's why I've been holding my head this whole time, because I know that you have no absolute way of determining these extra meanings that you're attaching these numbers. You literally just heard your favorite rapper say it, and now you're saying it too. And that's just not how learning works, man. That's not how learning works.
The reason I'm trying to because I thought it was kind of understood already that math literally orders our entire waking reality. Like there is nowhere in the universe where there's not mathematical pattern and precision of insane order. And that math is what I'm saying is intelligent. That math is guided by principles that are ever present in all waking realities. And
but you have not actually qualified yourself to know that. You just heard somebody say this and now you believe it, which is why you can't articulate it. You can only articulate the belief that you have, but you cannot articulate how you arrived at the conclusions, which is typically a
can
sign
literally
of
see in
indoctrination, not understanding.
We can literally see in cymatics how sound has like
You
these
can
specific
see
patterns
it.
that exist through all things. You can't see.
Did
You
you
can't Google
wait,
cymatics and see how
hold on.
sign.
Did you just say I want to hear? I think you just said something about sound creating things. Say that again.
So yeah, everything in the universe is vibration. I thought that was a well understood scientific principle.
Okay, so no, this is absolutely. I genuinely, like, I'm not even joking. Darante, a second ago, when you were like, you just heard what your favorite rapper said and you're repeating, I was like, that's harsh. Maybe he heard, but no, absolutely. If you fucking, so just so we're clear, the vibrations in things like atoms and subatomic particles are not the same thing as sound waves at all.
No, they're not the same thing, but they have the same principle of movement. They vibrate.
No, they don't. And trying to
You just said they vibrate.
those two vibration, a longitudinal mechanically induced pressure wave is a different circumstance than a fucking intermolecular force. And it sucks that I have to explain that because I'm not a physicist. I just know that because I have an undergrad training and a little bit of that makes it make sense. And these are very different things that you are conflating, and it is a very common bullshit woo-woo creationist thing that people like Deepak Chopra and shit that read the front cover of a physics textbook and then say, this is God, do. And it makes no fucking sense, but it appeals to people who have no training in science. You said you have a bachelor's in psychology, so you don't have any training in any hard sciences. And I hate the term hard science, but I'm using it in a way that differentiates here.
Yeah.
You don't have any training in any kind of math, in any kind of physics, in any kind of chemistry, in any kind of biology, and yet you're willing to prescribe this intentionality to all of those things because you misunderstood the word vibration. And that sucks. So next time you call in, Oriole, please just think about the things that you're saying and really like have an argument with yourself. I'm not like genuinely think about it and then ask yourself the kind of questions that you would expect to ask you if you were 5 and you were hearing that for the first time, and just tear yourself apart with it. And when you finally have a solid, actual good reason to believe what you believe, then call me back because I would love to talk to you about this stuff. But as of right now, you've given me nothing but poetry and it just doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
Roger. Yeah, no, and I understand where the disconnect is, absolutely. And I do, I
right.
see your perspective completely. That's why it's so frustrating. So,
all right. Take care, Oriole. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, you have a good one. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hello.
To the person who said I'm turning into Matt, how dare you? I haven't grown a goatee at all. I also learned truths and deeper meaning from my favorite raps. My favorite rap. What was it? Not the great American poet Asheru, who once said, "I am the stone that the builder refused. I am the visual, the inspiration that made ladies sing the blues.
Ladies sing the blues.
I'm the spark that made your idea bright. The same spark that lights the dark so that you can know your left from your right. I am the ballot in your box, the bullet in the gun, the inner glow that lets you know to call your brother son, the story that's just begun, the promise of what's to come. And I will remain a soldier until the war is won."
What?
Chop, chop, chop. Judo flip. Such a good song. They had no reason to make that song go that hard. They had no reason to make it that good.
Oh my goodness, it was awesome.
So good.
Awesome. Yes. Oh man.
What a show.
Oh man, that was man, that just brightened up my day just to have that little Boondocks, moment. That I feel better now.
Such a
bop, I was hurting, man.
It's a huge tune.
Yes.
You said repeating your favorite rapper, and I was like, I have things. I love
my beer. I have something for this.
I do that same stupid bit anytime if I'm ever talking about like just hearing me out, and I'm like, if I'm talking about socialism or if I'm talking about atheism or anything like that, and it's like somebody who's like, I just don't know. I'm like, was it not the great American poet Tupac Shakur who once said, "There's no need for you to fear me. If you take the time to hear me, maybe you could
Come
learn to
on.
cheer me." That's the point. That's the key. You just got to try.
Yes.
Give us a chance. We'll change your mind.
Oh man, I love it. I love it.
Oh man.
Oh.
To the person in the chat who said Forrest is definitely Riley and Darante is Huey. I don't know who needs to be offended in that situation.
Oh man. Oh, that's now I want to see that cartoon with us as them. That would be I'd watch it. I'd watch it.
We couldn't have. I am far too white to play this role. What are you talking about?
We have to put you in the cornrows and everything, man.
Who was that guy? Who was the guy who played the white teacher and they based it off of that teacher when the kid said the N-word in his class and he got on the news like talking about the differences between A versus ER and all this stuff. And it's like and they got the whitest dude in the world to play the teacher, and it was like, all right, you played this role so well. It's so good.
Oh my
How do you
goodness.
borrow a French fry? Are you gonna give it back? Such a good line. So good. Oh man. Anyway,
Oh my goodness.
it's been a show. Thanks for watching it. Durante, thank you so much for co-hosting. It's always a pleasure working with you, my dude.
Man, always. I'm always glad to be here with you, man.
Thank you so much to our call screener, Stephanie Helms. Thank you so much to Arden for producing tonight. Thank you so much to Faye Halo for doing the timestamps. Thank you so much to all of our mods in chat. Thank you so much to all the people in chat, even the ones that suck. Thank you so much to our callers, all the ones that suck. I'm stumbling over my words. Have an awesome rest of your day. Please don't talk about math when you call us next time. Bye!